Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 101. I've just got to do something before we move on.
I can hear the footy in the background.
No, that's me. I hold on. Sorry, we're out.
Cool. Yeah. As always, I'm going to start off with a tune, and it's going to be Chris Gard's tune, and it's going to be Tommy. Over to you, Chris.
Someone's got to turn their speakers off.
Mine are off. If your speakers are on, gents, turn them off.
I'm doing this through the headset.
Sorry about that. All sorted.
I went into a public house to get a pint of beer. The publican he up and says we serve no red coats here. The girls behind the bar they laughed and giggled fit to die. I out into the street again and to myself says I, oh, it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy go away. But it's thank you Mr. Atkins when the band begins to play. When the band begins to play, my boys, the band begins to play. Oh, it's thank you Mr. Atkins when the band begins to play. I went into a theatre as somewhere else could be. They gave a drunk civilian room that had none for me. They sent me to the gallery around the music halls. But when it comes to fighting, Lord, they'll push me in the stalls. For it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy right outside. With a special train for Atkins when the troopers on the tide. When the troopers on the tide, my boys, the troopers on the tide. Oh, a special train for Atkins when the troopers on the tide. You're making a mock of uniforms that guard you in your sleep. It's cheaper than the uniforms, and by Christ they're cheap. And hustling drunken sailors when they're going large a bit is a muchly better business than parading in full kit. Then it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy how's your soul. But it's Splendid Isolation heroes when the drums begin to roll. When the drums begin to roll, my boys, the drums begin to roll. Oh, I think the night of heroes when the drums begin to roll. We aren't nothing but heroes, well that much is true. But single men in barracks remarkable like you. And if sometimes our conduct isn't all your fancy pains, why single men in barracks don't grow into bastard saints. Well, it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy fall behind. But it's pleased to walk in front, so when there's trouble in the wine. Well, there's trouble in the wine, my boy, there's trouble in the wine. Oh, it's pleased to walk in front, so when there's trouble in the wine. You talk a better food for us in schools and for all. We'll wait for extra rations if you treat us rational. Don't mess about the cookery slops that prove it to our face. The widow's uniform is not the soldier man's disgrace. For it's Tommy this and Tommy that and chucking out the brute. But it's savior of his country when the guns begin to shoot. And it's Tommy this and Tommy that and anything you please. And Tommy ain't a bloomin' fool, you bet that Tommy sees.
All right, that was Tommy, which is obviously a Rudyard Kipling poem, performed by our own Chris Gard. Please go and check out Chris Gard's channel. It's called Chris Gard on YouTube. Yeah, so here we are at Splendid Isolation 101, which I would never have believed we would have got to. But we have. As always, I'm going to go around the panel and ask people if they have a particular subject they would like to bring up as a first talking point, and I'm going to start with Chris this week. Chris, did you have something you wanted to bring up as a first talking point?
Oh, well, of course. If you go onto news.com.au and go to politics, and it's basically just as terrible as you think it is from their media platform. But what I was reminded of was so this $280 cash handout that Prime Minister wants to give out to everyone in Australia, and it reminded me of this small business scheme that was happening in Queensland not long ago, and they're about to do another rollout of it, where you can apply as a small business and a sole trader to get 5,000 free government bucks. And basically, it's pretty much everyone's eligible that earns under a certain revenue. It's fucking pretty bad. It's like I'm just looking at it going, yeah, like we're all like, especially someone like me who works in the trade, just the absolutely out of control cost of materials, out of control cost of external services and stuff like that, as it is because of the inflation that's going on. And now they're just like, oh yeah, we're just going to give everyone free money, and that'll sort it out. And the money is like given to you on the proviso that you do things like improve advertising, improve your website, and all that sort of stuff. So you're talking about external outsourced services that are usually done in India. You might contract a business that's sort of based in Australia, but eventually it's all going to get outsourced to India. And all these other places, and America and Google. So it's like, yeah, you're literally just pissing money away.
No, you don't understand. Australia will print the money and make everyone rich. Okay, that's how it works.
Chris, can you not use an Aussie company if you want to?
Yeah, but
I mean, are there many Aussie companies that do that stuff even?
Yeah, but people are going to pick the cheapest one.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
Especially when it comes to stuff like website development, it's like you're just going to go to some like template website and pay some Chinese guy in India to fucking So
do you actually have a website for your business? I mean, I'm not.
I do. Yeah.
I'm not going to ask what it is, but you know.
Yeah. I'll do all that.
Well, I mean, normally when it comes to websites, a lot of people nowadays just use Skillshare. Was it? Skillspace? That's the one. Yeah, Squarespace. Yeah, I know a few people who have that advertiser. So if you need a discount, you know who to call.
Yeah, I mean, I would also add that like web development in general, like normally there's probably some oily teenager who's like your nephew's, like who's your nephew or something like that, who can normally do it, and you can normally pay them like very cheap bucks for it. It's a pretty
that would make sense.
There's a lot of people in my age group and slightly younger who basically pretty simple to build a website these days. So,
what do you guys think about the idea of maybe us dudes on the right, or sensible centrists, or whatever we're calling ourselves these days? What do you dudes think about maybe we should be able to like point people in the right direction for that kind of stuff?
What, like development and like learning how to
website development and stuff like that. So if you've got a small business, like and you maybe are right of center a bit, you could say, okay, well, go and talk to those dudes, and maybe they'll give you a discount, this kind of stuff,
Yeah, I mean, it's not a sort of like these sort of skills are not a sort of area that you're going to get people concentrating in, particularly who are politically interested. I mean, like, if you want someone to build a website as well, like, I honestly, this is not something I would make a political haystack out of. Just find an oily teenager. They probably want the money anyway. It's just something that's simple.
Yeah. All right. There's a hell of a lot of Zoomers who are fairly up on the internet, so I suppose that's true enough.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you're always tripping over programmers in the online, right? Anyway, so
yeah.
Well, that's because they learned to code.
Yeah. I mean, you get that AI coming out from Santa Fe at the moment, which is like basically can write news articles. Like the journalists are gone.
I mean, considering some of the articles that actual journalists are putting out there, I'm just like, why is this a South Park skit? Why am I seeing South Park skits literally as news articles?
Well, yeah, well, I mean, it's not those articles that you should worry about that like are probably going to be automated, because you like need a reasonable amount of intelligence to like write them. Don't laugh at that. Like the actual articles that are going to go is that like how to watch the new season of Lord of the Rings or something like that. Like those articles that some poor journalist who got a degree in journalism and they're just starting out at like a really wee publisher, and it's just awful, and they have to write like 100 of those articles a day. That's their job, and it's going to go. Like journalism is in general just getting eviscerated.
Well, now
Anyway.
they can literally just feed the story into an AI program and it writes the fucking article for them.
Well, exactly. That was the point I was making.
And
Sorry,
a lot of the so-called mainstream media journalists, as George was just saying, like they don't earn enough to feed themselves for a day from an article.
Well, yeah, they need to write more, and also if you haven't noticed, you can actually check some articles, and you can look at CNN writing an international news story, and then check that off NBC, and like you'll notice a lot of the paragraphs are like really similar, almost the same.
Yeah.
Well, it's been known that they've actually literally copy and pasted articles between companies.
Yeah.
Like it's the classic. Okay, here's my homework, but don't make it a blatant copy.
But everyone, I presume everyone's seen that video where like everyone on the MSM is saying our democracy, our democracy, our democracy.
I think what happens is that like the editors for like all the media companies basically just get handed down the list by the Associated Press, and they'll already have the pre-structure for each paragraph basically there ready to go. They just need to fill in the blanks.
Well, it's like all the major media subsidiaries which provide news are like either a subset of Amazon or Disney, or I can't remember, there's a few others. So like in the end of the day, they actually all have the same boss, or very few bosses. So
thank God, Larry Fink
in the
around
end,
the corner in every building.
In the end, we are all owned by BlackRock. Just remember.
Indeed.
Speak for yourself.
I love.
Well, we all seem
but behind every tree and under every rock there lies a Larry Fink.
Pretty much, and we all seem to be increasingly owned by our governments, which is like, you know.
I love my owners. I love them.
Yeah, I do. I adore my owners. I honestly do.
Yeah. Where's my magic lamp so I can have my 3 wishes and to fix this problem?
Sorry.
Well, they might send you $5,000 Australian dollars.
How much is that worth in English again?
It's like £3,000.
No, it's been more than that.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's more than that now, Chris.
5,000 Australian dollars.
Probably 4,500 or
the line
4,300. Something
as the pound crashed or something.
Pretty much. Yeah.
It has. Let's see.
It's 2,770. It's 2,770. So it's about.
So that's what I was thinking, because it's nearly.
So the Aussie dollar's crashed too. What a surprise!
Well, most of the currencies have gone crap. Actually, I do remember. Where's that Twitter post I heard saved up? Where is it? I know I have a Twitter post here saved. Where is it?
Sorry, I have to bring this up. Have you guys heard what's going on in Indonesia, where they passed a sweeping change to the criminal code? So any sex, like for anyone who has sex outside of marriage, even if you're a traveling like tourist going to Bali, if you get caught having sex outside of marriage, you could potentially go to jail for a year.
Whoa!
Yeah. Okay. I got the post up. Okay, guys. I got the post up here. It's from Karen.com. You gotta love this, right?
Kizzo, you do your bit, and then we'll go back to what Chris was just saying.
So talking about currencies here, I've just got it here. The Russian ruble went up by 28.6%. Second, and then the rest is like only 4 of them went up slightly. That's like the Bavarian sol, Mexican peso, Brazilian rubles, and everything else went down. Like British pound went down by 18.72%. Turkish lira, it's 28.18%. Euro 14.3%. Basically, all the currencies went crap through 2022. But Russian ruble was just like, yes, this is my time.
All right. That's interesting. Thank you, Kiza. Going back to Chris Gard's point, like Bali, which is part of Indonesia, is kind of the Australian equivalent of Benidorm in Spain for Brits. So if like the same sort of people go to Bali as go to Benidorm.
I've crafted out what could have possibly happened in my head. So essentially, what must have happened is a Tradcath Zoomer from Twitter must have got elected to the Indonesian government and decided he really hates that people have sex.
No, but don't forget, they're a very Islamic country. No, that's a very Islamic country.
No, but Bali isn't. Bali is not Islamic because bits of Indonesia are not. But the thing is, the same sort of people from Australia go to Bali every year as go to Benidorm from England, from Britain, I beg your pardon, to Spain in Benidorm. So this is the sort of people you're talking about. And you're trying to tell me that if you have sex out of wedlock in Indonesia, in Bali, you're going to go to jail? This is going to be very, very
amazing. That's
amazing. Very interesting.
Yeah, I would say whoever posted that in the private chat, we all know that the man in question of who you're referencing is a giant homosexual and should honestly be discarded from society because he's part of the problem.
Which one?
Just out of interest.
Look at the private chat.
Just out of interest, would that law extend to prostitution?
It'll have to, surely. It'll have
well,
to.
I mean,
surely.
like normally there is like a wiggle room in these sort of things, but I mean, because normally you want high-end escorts because that's like what you get, like some greasy Westerner that goes over to Southeast Asia to find a squeeze. Should we say?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't Indonesia like the largest Muslim country in the world?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Bali is pretty Buddhist, but it's still the country
population-wise. It's also very. It's also got one of the fastest growing populations in Asia.
I love that. 20-minute marriages incoming.
For people to understand, East Timor, which used to be Portuguese, got taken over by the Indonesians. Mm-hmm. And eventually the Indonesians were shooting and raping so many East Timorese that the Australians sent the army there. And obviously the Australian army stopped that in like 2 weeks because the Indonesians were not actually very good soldiers. But yeah, that Indonesia, Indonesia is a very dubious place from an Australian perspective. And in fact, one could argue that the Australian military is set up to fight Indonesia on its own. It's the only country the Australian military is set up to fight on its own, and it would be. But but loads of Aussies go to Bali, and it's kind of like a party place to go.
Honestly, I would never go to Benidorm myself, but
no, nor would I. And I've never been to Bali either. But I know people who have been there. I know quite a lot of people who've been there because it's a common Aussie holiday spot, if you like.
Basically, Mallorca for Aussies.
Yes, pretty much.
How cheap's
rip the locals? My condolences to the locals.
Some people are saying Nick Fuentes goes there, so I don't know.
Right.
Wow.
So it's a stripper bar.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I don't. Look, Nick Fuentes is a good Catholic. A good Catholic virgin who used to have a cat boyfriend, but I'm sure he's a great guy, really.
No. He's just clearly someone who I would say, on Duke, you would be a good candidate for this. He needs a much older fatherly figure to kindly beat him in his place.
Take him to the BDSM club.
No. He'd never manage that because he'd be way too subby for that. So no.
Really, he needs more.
Are you an expert on subby gentlemen, dude?
I know nothing about subby gentlemen.
Oh, really?
Except I despise
He's on the
them.
back foot now, boys. Get him.
No, I just despise them, honestly.
What's his safe word? Is it oy vey?
Oy vey, oy vey, oy vey. I thought it was like Uwe.
Oh, God, no.
Lol.
Yeah, no, the Indonesian military, as Puffwagon is saying in the chat, Robert Verlinden is saying in the chat, are designed to fight separatist groups. Well, yeah, so long as they're mostly women and children. But the Indonesian military is not that great. Joe is unsubbed because we've slagged off his wonderful leader, Nick Fuentes. There we go.
And also, Nick Fuentes is a manlet, and let's be frank here, all of us could easily beat him in the punch-up. Let's be frank here.
I mean, that's hardly a competition, considering that like he's made of spaghetti and cheese. Like he's not a very strong guy. Like you can just tell from his frame.
Well, yeah, but even
I just don't get how you get you like he became famous because of his griping. Okay. He griped some of the mainstream, Republican people.
Which he did do a good job with, admittedly.
Yeah, and he did do a good job. Charlie, whatever his name was.
Charlie Kirk, yeah. And,
Charlie Kirk. He did a good job on that. He did. He did a good job on that. But then he recently went along with Milo and Yi and... like Fuentes, I'm not a big fan of Fuentes, never have been, but he's intelligent enough that he knew what was going on with Milo and Yi when they went to see Trump. That didn't come as a surprise to him.
My personal suspicion about the guy is because I remember that period in 2019. It was 2019 quite well, and my general thing was that he was basically expecting that, he was going to get the Republicans to change. And then he got impatient and then he started going completely crazy. The other thing I would say is that that whole strategy was terribly planned because it was basically, he wanted to talk about the USS Liberty and all that. And it just if you want to hit the center, the centrist Republicans, the rhinos, you need to go after them on social conservatism. But foreign policy, most people, as a general rule, both in the US and over here, do not care about foreign policy. It's just it's not a huge issue.
And on top of that as well, it's the one thing the establishment won't cuck on ever.
Yeah.
So you're better off just not trying to tackle that.
I mean, look, recently Fuentes has been saying Hitler was great and all this kind of stuff. And
no, it's just trying to be an actual.
He's just killing himself, and he's destroying any chance he ever had.
Well, I mean, I quite liked Trump's name for him. He didn't. Trump's in his letter. He didn't spend overly long talking about how terrible he is. He just called him Little Nicky and left it at that. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, but it's just.
I mean, look, I've said this before that Milo should have a great big neon flashing light over his head saying, "Don't trust me." And Fuentes getting involved with that wank should prove everything you need to know.
Well, yeah, but it's Milo, it makes me laugh how he tried slagging off people about being alpha. I'm like, mate, you are the biggest bottom the so-called political spectrum has ever seen. If you was in prison, you'd be the epitome of a prison female dog. And that's just for you. He would be the biggest female dog in prison the world has ever seen. I wouldn't be surprised he ended up creating a new STD with how much of a prison female dog he would be.
Ooh.
I have Fuentes syndrome.
That's vicious.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. People say oh, he's good, he's actually useful and all that. No, the problem is he's a little feces right, who clearly has daddy issues, who can't accept that he was a victim, and needs a massive beating. And no, I'm not talking the BDSM kind. I'm talking like get the belt out, Uncle Ruckus style beating for those who are men of culture.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with any of you guys. Cardamom in the chat says Fuentes can meet all the fat women Duke knew in that club. Man, you know what? My biggest thing against BDSM is if you ever go to a BDSM club, and the only time I ever go to them is because some chick wants me to take her, is that you will see these women who are wearing leather. No, you will see these women who are wearing leather corsets that required at least 3 cows to be murdered in order to wear them. That is one of my biggest objections to those places.
People going to BDSM clubs.
No. Did you vomit when you saw them, Duke, like a man?
Yeah, pretty much. I certainly threw up in my mouth. And as I said, the only time I ever go to those places is because some chick wants to go. I know what they're like. That's why I don't want to go.
I like how Duke goes into a BDSM club and gets offended and upset of all the cows that had to die to supply their fun.
No, like I mean, me personally.
No. It's only you misunderstand me, Chris. It's because 3 cows were required to die.
Yeah, they should use PVC.
Man, that's a really big woman.
Yeah, that's a really big woman. Trust me, and every
like a lizzo,
a literal heifer.
You'll see them, mate. You'll see them. I trust.
A proper hippopotamus, right there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, fair enough. All right,
this is highbrow content, I must say.
Well, I mean, the thing that
you know what, part of our content is entertainment, because otherwise, why would anyone watch us?
You're speaking like someone that has a lot more experience of these places than just the 3 visits you told us about.
No, I haven't. I hang on, let me think.
I only used to be the manager, said Jack.
No, hang on, wait a minute.
He was the bouncer.
No, hang on.
What type of bouncer?
I actually have been a bouncer, but not on those things.
Was it bouncing on that giant fat woman? With
not in those places, no. But no, I think, let me think. I've probably been to a BDSM club maybe half a dozen times in 58 years.
But you said
maybe
3. Fucking hell.
All right, so I've been half a dozen times in 58 years.
That's a good
He's basically been 3 times since last week, is what he's trying to say.
No, George. The last time I went to one was...
He's got like a loyalty member's card.
The last time I went to one was at least 7 years ago, actually.
Do you reckon next week is going to be 1 year ago?
No. I don't like them. I think I've kind of explained why. But all right. Whatever you guys think. No, it's not to meet 30 stone women, really. I'll give you a story, actually. I was once at this party.
I wonder what kind of company this guy keeps.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't like it. If you're a Christian, you wouldn't like me, man. But anyway, I went to this party once in Brisbane, by the way, which I know Chris knows. The girl I took was looking behind my shoulder with like this wide-eyed look, as if she'd just seen a nuclear bomb go off. So I looked over my shoulder, and there was this naked 25-stone woman, and I'm not joking. And I did throw up in my mouth. I have to say, I did.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Can we get the disgusting clip inserted here, please?
No, there's no disgusting clips on this stream. There's no disgusting strip on this thing. But yeah, all right. Yeah. I'm going to move on at this point. Kizza, did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up?
Dare I say we followed the crowd and talk about all the controversy regarding the Twitter files that being released, thanks to the South African man himself, Elon Musk.
Go for it. Yep.
Yes, I'm sure most of you are aware there's been lots of interesting details that have been released thanks to Elon Musk taking over Twitter. And where's that Alex Jones or right-wing penny jar? Because it's overflowing. We need about 2 extra jars.
Yeah, it did
That's
look
all
pretty
I gotta
bleak.
say on that. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
we were consistently proven right about the shadow banning, proven right about Twitter having highly illegal content on their platform, which I dare not repeat.
I think it's actually like worse than that, because like the original hypothesis around big tech was basically that you basically got people that are just aligned with one side of the political spectrum, and they then alter things to that degree. But like, I would personally say that like what's actually come out is that basically the government will treat Twitter and other apparati as extensions of the government, because you've got FBI agents essentially going, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, otherwise we'll investigate you. And you had someone who's like head of community trust or whatever it is, nonsense term, and he's basically he was meeting the FBI agents. So like it's at this point, like, I mean, of course Twitter isn't anymore, it's become independent, and we'll see how long that lasts, because Elon Musk is under investigation and will probably be until his dying breath now. But
BS investigations as usual.
Yeah, but we basically now understand the federal government does view social media companies as an extension of itself, which kind of that was not what I was expecting. I was expecting the companies to basically go, okay, we align with these people, so this is what we'll do. But it's actually like, well, no, this is actually the deep state. And I don't mean that in a conspiracy way. I mean that in,
I know.
It's actually been revealed.
No, like to be honest, I'm not surprised whatsoever, considering most of these social media companies got tons of money from the federal government. They got tons of money from it, and let's not forget, people talking about, oh, it's a private company. No. Only when when Elon brought it, they were all PLCs, which people don't seem to understand. That's a public limited company. It's not private in the old-fashioned sense. It's technically what it actually means is that the public can happily buy into the company.
Yeah.
That's what it literally stands for. And literally means is that, and that's why they're on the stock market. If they were truly private companies, they wouldn't run the way that they do. They wouldn't be losing, I think, what was it? Twitter losing as much as $4 million of debt a week.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that was coming from, I mean, to be fair, that's not entirely related to it being publicly traded, because you can just have the CEO basically go, okay, we don't have enough money, so what we're going to do is going to sell a whole bunch of corporate bonds. As well as for a long time, there were a lot of corporate bonds sold by Twitter. Actually, one of the big problems that Twitter is having is that because of federal interest rates rising, Twitter corporate bonds were actually not as competitive as federal bonds anymore, because federal bonds are normally like the gold standard in terms of reliability. Again, we'll see how long that lasts. But like the main issue with them being publicly traded, I mean, that it's not entirely important if the shareholders don't care, or there's not a plurality of them. Like if there's a plurality of shareholders who want a certain thing, then they'll do it, or at least they'll appoint a CEO who does it. But like, it's very hard normally to get shareholders to think like that. Normally, the shareholders like don't care or cannot form a caucus. So
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the reason why this happened, the way it happened, was that you basically got someone with a mission, a man on the mission, who like he doesn't care about the Twitter stock price. Elon Musk genuinely could not give a fig, because SpaceX and Tesla are both appreciating in value very well, and they probably will continue to do so for the next 10 years. So he doesn't need Twitter stock prices to go up. He just wants to. He just knows Twitter because he wants to.
Well, the thing is, Twitter now is fully private. It's no longer on the stock market.
Yeah.
So he's made it
full. But that's not going to last. I mean, Musk has said that eventually he will send it back to the market.
I don't think he said that. I think he said that he will no longer be in charge, which would mean he'd basically appoint a top guy, and that makes sense because Elon Musk is a busy man. He does a lot of things in a lot of companies, and so I would expect as much. But I don't think it's going to go back to being publicly traded. At least he doesn't intend for that to happen. It could be
not straight away, but I think it will eventually.
Good few years, I imagine.
I really doubt Elon Musk would do that. But what seems more likely to me is that the courts would tell him he has to sell it. He has to start selling shares.
Yeah, fair enough, George.
I'm sorry. I'd be like, hang on, it's my company. I brought it out. I do what the fuck I like with it. Ever heard of private property rights, good sir?
Yeah, but
but he's gonna, like George is saying, he has a lot of irons in the fire. So he's going to be doing something else at some point.
I mean, already he's kind of been made to cuck in a small way on a certain decision, which was he tried to fire the Twitter vice president for Ireland. I think it's actually just for the European office, but it's based in Ireland. And
no surprise.
And the courts forced him to take that woman back.
Wow, that's not good.
Well, I mean, look, that was probably
let me guess,
that was probably down to European labor market law.
Yeah,
because it's really like in America you can hire and fire like that. But
it was. They did say it was strictly the way that he fired her.
Yeah,
I don't know the exact specifics, but supposedly it was because it was handled through a form of correspondence that isn't acceptable under sort of the Irish law. So
was it just like an email that said "you're fired"? Lol.
I think it was literally something.
I think actually a lot of places don't allow that.
No bitches.
I think, especially if you're contracted directly to Twitter, like especially to a company like that, they have to fire you the proper way.
Yeah,
they can't just be
I've fired at least 2 girlfriends via SMS messages, and they got really upset with me. But
well, that's a first. A man breaking up the relationship. No,
men have to do that, mate. Because if you don't, that's how you get cut. But
I remember one time I did break up a girl, but my God, ironically enough, her father took my side.
There you go. She might have been a girl you shouldn't have broken up with, actually.
No. In my defense, she was getting incredibly clingy, and I wasn't having any of it. And she decided to cause a scene when I was out with my younger cousin. It was his birthday. I was treating him to a birthday present, and she caused an entire scene in a freaking store. And thankfully, her father turned up and told her to cut it out. And he took my side.
Has anyone ever had a woman who didn't cause a scene at some
stage
or another?
No. Let me explain, Andrew. I was out with my young cousin.
Yeah, no, I get it.
She wasn't there. She just noticed me and turned up and then caused the scene. I hadn't called her in a week.
I totally get it, Kizzer. I'm just saying, has any bloke ever had a woman who didn't cause a scene at some stage or another? Because they just do. I'm sorry, Lady Echelon in the chat. I'm sure you never have, but you're the absolute unicorn compared to most women. But
I bet she has.
She's married.
She may have caused the scene actually at some stage, but in general terms, Lady Charlotte is a very based woman. But
smirch her good name, sir.
No, I would never do that. Lady of Shalott is in my Discord, and she's the only woman in my Discord. So,
Isn't a unicorn a BDSM thing?
Oh, no.
No, it's actually the national. It's actually the national law Scotland.
But you arsehole. No, it is not. No, a unicorn is a male thing, and it refers
it's where you
to
get
that.
The horn, right? Okay.
No. All right. If you're not going to stop, I'll stop the stream and we'll end it. But no,
you want to address something in the chat quick?
No. Look, a unicorn is a male thing, and what it is that exceptional woman who is unlike every other woman. That's what.
Yeah, isn't it? It's like it's that point on the graph where it's like 9 out of 10 always corresponds with 9 out of 10 craziness.
Yeah,
and the unicorn is the 1% craziness and 9 out of 10 looks.
Yeah, I would say on
exception.
that whole heart crazy matrix. There's one big bit of fake news I do have to take with that. I'm sorry, trannies are never 9 out of 10 and 2 out of 10 crazy. They're always 2 out of 10 for hotness and 10 out of 10 for crazy, just by definition. I'm sorry. It's a fact.
But who cares? They're blokes, so I've no interest in trannies.
Well, I don't either, but let's not go into the whole "what is a woman" subject.
Well, yeah, let's go into what is a woman. A woman is someone who can have a baby. If they can't have a baby, they ain't a woman.
But what about women that can't have babies? Are they not women?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say 4 lines, 4 words: adult, human, female being. If you don't meet these 4 criterias, get out of here.
So what
Absolutely.
if she's not being?
If you've ever had a dick, you're not a woman.
Okay, so what's the verdict on that American 6'9" basketball American?
She should have been left to rot in Russia.
Well, I'm sorry. They should have read Donald Trump's book, Art of the Deal, and they would have made such an appalling deal. I'm just saying. I mean, me personally,
hang on this subject. On this subject, I must just say, there is a ex-US Marine Corps dude in a Russian jail who they left there in favor of this fucking thing that they brought back
That's
to
what
the
I was about to
USA.
bring up, actually.
Go for it, Alan.
There was a clip going around of Russian television where they were basically just laughing at America for choosing to release this do this prisoner swap with this apparent basketball player. And they actually, the woman on there actually, supposedly this is a reasonably popular show over there, but this woman just said, well, that Marine Corps guy, I forget his name, Paul something.
Paul Whelan.
Yeah.
Paul Whelan, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Paul Whelan.
Had three problems in his direction, which was that he was male, heterosexual, and white. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of a sort of weird thing for them to call it to rights like that on TV.
Well, on that point, I'm just going to say, I'm still waiting for this so-called white male privilege that apparently I have. I'm still not seeing it, lads. I would like to trade it. I mean, there's definitely 5 privileges I could say that are above white male privilege. Female privilege.
I will say that you do have it though. It's being able to take privilege in the fact that all your enemies hate you because you are superior.
Yeah.
The answer is you can cash it in at any job application and go straight to the bottom of the pile.
Exactly. And I'm just looking. I hope Don the Pleb will do a video on this stuff because he's a U.S. Marine Corps guy. How does America leave a former U.S. Marine Corps bloke, who are the most patriotic of all Americans I've ever seen, behind to bring home this basketball American in favor of him? And who are they swapping? Who are they swapping? They're swapping the Lord of War.
The Marine Corps are deplorables.
Yeah, well, according to senile Biden and the Democrats, I'm sure that's true. But I do hope that at some stage Don the Pleb will do a video on this and talk about his former Marine Corps buddy on this story. It's ridiculous. Like, the Americans gave the Russians one of the worst guys in the entire world.
Wasn't he released once he got there?
Well, I'm sure he will be. Because why wouldn't you? Because if you're Russia and you know America is trying to destroy you and remove Putin, why wouldn't you use this dude? I would.
Yeah, supposedly his family have been sort of in the limelight in Russia for a while, sort of appearing on TV shows and stuff like that, talking about wanting to get him back. So yeah, it was. I think it's basically been in the cards for a long time that if they got him back, he wasn't going to be facing any time over there. It's they kind of see him as doing nothing wrong. He didn't do nothing.
Could we briefly speak about Assange, Julian Assange, the Australian, who the Australian government will not do a single thing to help? Could we briefly speak about Assange? Like Assange, why is he going to be sent from the UK to America, where he will spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement? Why?
No, he shouldn't. It's quite. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he should be completely. What's the word? Not pardoned, but basically be immune.
Executed.
That's the word. No. Exonerated of all charges, because ultimately he did nothing wrong. He ultimately did nothing wrong. But going back to that Marine,
I don't think he did either. That's my view.
But ultimately on the Marine Corps thing, one thing I will say, that option alone, I would dare say, I would not. I would argue if the Marine Corps is truly as patriotic as I hear, well, then they should do a General Francis Hummel. And if you know what I'm talking about, you are all men of culture, men and women of culture, and just cause a mutiny against the Democrat establishment, and maybe, I don't know, demonstrate what real patriotism really is.
Disavow. We advocate everyone is a pliable, normal person, please. And you
do, George. You do.
I am simply trying to keep you avoidant of repercussions, should we say?
I just don't understand how the Americans can get this twat who wanted to take her weed into Russia, which she knew was illegal, and why they get her back, but they leave this poor ex-US Marine Corps dude rotting in a Russian prison. That does not sound like at all sane or sound to me.
It's not just
who their leader is.
So what? I'm also hearing they're doing an article that's saying, "Oh well, like look at Bahari. She had to shave her dreadlocks apparently because of winter kept freezing them."
Poor girl.
So now we're just going to get barraged with news about how Viktor Putin is winning the concentration camp or whatever. Now that's what we're going to get. Meanwhile,
yeah, totally, Mitch. I think you're 100% right. But I mean, like, it's just insanity again from the West.
Well, it's just it's kind of funny because, like, I'm sort of reminded of the fact that the US and the Soviet Union, as it was then, used to do a lot of hostage exchanges all the time. There's that Tom Hanks film about like both a journalist who got stuck over there as well as a US Air Force pilot, and they managed to exchange them for one Soviet spy. And like, that's based on a true story. And it's like, that's a fantastic deal. And it's like America should theoretically have a lot of bargaining power against Russia. Oh, wait, which
they do. Which they do if they even tried. I mean, I'm pretty sure to get the Lord of War back, the Russians would have accepted this US Marine Corps dude as well. But the Americans didn't even ask because they don't want him.
Yeah, I've also heard a part of the deal was that because the Americans were gunning for this guy called Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. So they also said, okay, because the Saudis broke up the deal, they have to also like exonerate the Saudis from like some criminal case as well. So it's like it gets even weaker because it's not just like because the Saudis are aligning more with Russia, so you just got America being even weaker. Never mind.
Totally agree. Mitch, I totally agree. But I would just say another thing. What has Britain done to totally cuck to the Americans to send Assange to the USA? And equally, I would say to Chris, who's an Aussie, why is the Australian government doing nothing whatever to defend Assange? And they never have. This is like, it's what it is Britain and Australia being good little boys and doing whatever the Americans tell us to do.
Well,
and I find it disgusting.
On the UK, it's sort of a matter of hands being tied because the UK is essentially going into a very unpleasant time economically. and there is this trade deal that's being drafted up at the moment. If I recall correctly, it's not a very good one, but it's like basically, the higher ups think it's what we need. And of course, if there is possible, it's possible that in a few years' time, Britain's going to have a liquidity crisis in which the pound is, basically bonds will crash in value.
Are you suggesting, George, that Britain might become even more dependent on the Yanks than we already are?
Yeah, you could possibly get to a point at which the UK would have to become a subsidiary part of the American economy in order to pay for itself. I could realistically see the pound being disbanded and us going to the dollar.
Yeah, and Australia, we're also desperately in need to keep on US good side because we're about to undergo the biggest decoupling with China that I think we've ever seen. The government's basically making signals that we're fucking done with China and we need US on our good side. So there was no way they were going to quabble over some journalist that they don't even care about. They've all talked themselves into thinking that he was a traitor as well anyway, because they got whipped so hard by the US that they just love it now and they'll do anything they want. So,
yeah. But Chris, Australia has always been anti-China. And if it really comes to it, the US doesn't have any choice but to back Australia against China in the same way as they have to back Japan against China. They don't have any choice in this.
Yeah, but we're still there. We're still the whipping boy of the State Department. That's just how it is.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying, and it's the same in the UK. But it's nonsense because, if the US wants to fight China, the people they have to have on their side to have any chance of winning are Australia and Japan and the UK. Because if they don't have those countries, they won't win.
Probably not the UK. But...
No, absolutely the UK. They need the UK carrier group, mate. Trust me, they do.
They've never won a war without us.
Pardon my skepticism on that, but two relatively
your skepticism on that, I'm going to absolutely pardon, but it's rubbish because the Americans don't have the Navy they would like to have anymore.
Two Stovall carriers with American planes, each one accommodating about 36 aircraft is not they can carry.
That's a huge deal.
Less aircraft than a single Nimitz class aircraft.
You're really wrong about that, George. America has a limited number of aircraft carriers, all right?
Yeah,
it has I'm going to try and give you the basic 101 of war here. America has a very limited number of aircraft carriers.
Right? More than the rest of the world combined.
If you sink one, that is 5,000 American servicemen on that carrier. 5,000. One carrier. Right. America cannot beat China on her own in the South China Sea. She might be able to beat China everywhere else around the world, but that ain't going to happen.
So it needs a couple of British floaters.
Those. Listen, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be rude, George, but I'm trying to teach you 101 on military and naval stuff here. Like an extra British carrier with its extra British escort group means the Chinese have something else they have to worry about. Just as they will have to worry about a Japanese task force and probably absolutely certainly an Australian task force and possibly even a South Korean task force. All of those things makes China's job, each time you add one, it makes China's job 100% more difficult, right? If all of those countries fight China, I still am of the opinion that at the end of it, the West will win, not China. But only just. And a lot of people are going to die. But if it was just America on her own, with no Japan, no Australia, and no Royal Navy, No, America, I don't think they would win, actually, on their own.
Well,
these days.
America needs dirt to put its aircraft on, but I do not.
No, America has no dirt to put their aircraft carriers on in the South China Sea. There is none.
Oh, you literally just ignored everything.
Wait, America does not have dirt.
The whole point of why it needs Taiwan and Japan is because it needs the dirt.
Yeah,
right?
but you can't fly from Japan and do anything useful against China. The range is too long. You do understand this, don't you?
I mean, well, that's contextual on the sort of things because, of course, you've got air refueling. But notice that I also mentioned Taiwan, which is,
but Taiwan's air bases will get wiped out very quickly.
Sure.
Or what you could do is just wait 10 years and China will completely collapse.
I doubt this.
No.
Hang on, everyone, be quiet. Let George speak. Why do you doubt it?
Okay, so people say that regimes are going to collapse all the time, and normally they base the idea that they're going to collapse on sort of like, oh, I see a protest. Like there is the same thing. What's happening now? There's the same thing with Tiananmen Square because people associated the collapse of the Soviet regime with the Chinese regime. The reason why I don't think China is going to collapse is because Chinese bureaucracy has proven itself to be extremely stable, as long as it knows what it's doing. And normally, the thing that collapses China are external threats. And at the moment, I do not see credible evidence that the only reasonable external threat is the United States, and the United States isn't interested in doing that. So I would expect China to remain extremely stable. The main thing about China that is interesting is that China probably has the third of the economic wealth that it claims it does, and that's extracted from satellite data. But in terms of the stability of the actual Chinese nation, like China does autocracy and authoritarianism better than any other country on earth. They have 2,500 years of being pros at autocracy, and the idea that a few little protests are going to stump them, it's such baby speak. No offense, but I think it's such baby speak.
I'm not talking about collapse through because of protests. I'm talking economic collapse.
Well, I was kind of thinking more when people talk about it, demographic collapse, but
okay.
I'm never really too sure about that.
Well, that's true as well. They're like that demographic collapse is going to utterly fuck their economy. I mean, it's for them right now because of all their fucking crazy zero COVID policies. It's screwing over major corporations like Apple to the point that Apple are pulling out. They're going to neighboring countries like India.
If countries pull out, like China is already probably not as wealthy as people seem to think it is, and it probably already has a debt liability much larger than people think it is.
Totally agree, George. Totally agree.
I don't think that's actually going to matter in terms of its internal stability. Like if China has a population problem, then, because there's too many old people, then what it will do is it'll put all the old people in pits. Like it's horrid, but that's the reality of it. Because that's how the CCP works.
100%. That's why I hate the Chinese Communist Party. But
I mean, I want to put all my enemies in pits, so I kind of get at least a little bit of sympathy for them.
No,
it's only worthy if you were to cut them into
I
a
don't
Mortal Kombat
totally
style.
agree with that, mate. I don't totally agree with that, mate.
But
I know you.
Well,
I know you.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that point, I mean, on that subject, I'd love to do a little physics experiment with everyone past and present in Parliament and the House of Lords. But I'm sure all of you gentlemen are intelligent enough to work out what kind of physics experiment I'm talking about.
Drop them out of planes.
No. I'm talking a type of machine that uses magnets, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Let's just say I'll be going for a world record.
I'm still going to say what I've said for a very long time.
Duke, can you please bring up the slide that I just brought up in the live StreamYard, please? Screenshot.
There you go.
Yeah, I did see this.
Right.
I mean, to be fair, Time Magazine.
The bad comedy actor of the year is the person of the year. Wow.
I mean, this is Times Magazine. I mean, shall we go through some of the names they've had over the years?
And I'm pretty sure that Zelensky has dual citizenship, doesn't he? And like
Yes, with a certain...
enormous houses in America and Israel and all over the bloody place.
I'm not surprised. I mean, let's be frank here. How many of these people do not have some sort of dual citizenship with Israel at this point? I'm just saying. And also,
does Rishi Sunak? I don't think he does. Does
he's Indian, so he doesn't count it.
So senile Joe Biden, I don't think he does either. So yeah,
no.
Look, I don't say there is no truth in the JQ, but I do say certainly outside America is generally vastly exaggerated by people on our side.
Now, all I got to say is, I've never read the book by Karl Marx, but it might be the sanest book I might have come across, honestly, considering how much of an utter moron that man was. I mean, quite frankly, us English, we should never have allowed them into our country. We should have just exiled them back to where he came from.
Will you stop the Fed posting, please?
Right
now.
No, I kind of agree. We shouldn't have allowed Marx into our country. I do kind of agree with that.
What, Ukrainians?
No,
I'm talking about Karl Marx.
Karl Marx shouldn't have been allowed in the UK. I kind of agree with that. Then, UK was a very free country.
Well, I mean, in terms of movements of people, it's like.
Well, there was so little of it.
Yeah, it wasn't something that was conceived of as a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the only real example we have in that sort of time period, like before the Industrial Revolution, is basically the Mongol Empire, which created the concept of passports, in which if a Mongolian rider could ride across the Silk Route, and he would put his thing in a stable, and he would show the scroll or something like that, and then they would like go, yeah, sure, here's another horse, off you go. Like apart from that, most civilizations just don't really have a concept of that. Like you have concepts of citizenship, like in the Roman Empire, quite famously with St. Paul, but like apart from that, it's just not something that people really conceive of.
Oh, come on, George. The British Empire. Britain and the British
King Henry
Empire had
a
very, very strong sense of people and nation. They did.
Well, that's not what I said. What I said was in terms of border control, that like border control is a relatively newer concept in terms of movement, because people just normally it used to be that movement was extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So most people couldn't do it. Now movement's cheap, so people worry about it.
Fair enough. And of course, our globalist overlords, and I don't mean specifically small hats, because most of them are not. They want us to stop traveling even in our own towns.
Oh, don't get me started on that. Do not get me started on that.
No, come on. We'll talk about it in a bit, Kizza, but I do. They don't want us traveling in our own towns, and they're certainly going to stop the average pleb getting a cheap flight to a foreign country. Although all of our overlords will continue flying in their private jets.
Well. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, all environmentalists are giant grifters, and the only way to prove that they are going to make me believe that they're genuine environmentalists is if they're homeless in their birthday suits, living off the pure fat of the land. Effectively, go back to monkey, to use an expression.
Eat grass. Yeah.
Yes. Go back to then. And the fact that they do not do that or make any attempts whatsoever, as far as I'm concerned, in fact, it should be illegal to be an environmentalist. In fact, I would argue, if I was king, hypothetically, maybe I'll find that magic lamp, I would make all environmentalists homeless in their birthday suits. And everyone who pushes regulations, I'm going to take all their private jets, I'm going to take all their yachts, take all their properties, and make them all homeless in their birthday suits in order to teach them a lesson.
I'd agree. and I'd send them all.
And anyone
to,
says, that's just blatant theft. How dare you go full communist on these people? I'm like, I'm sorry. These people are ultimately communists. They straight up admitted this. I mean, I will even find you the article. The guy who, one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion, admitted this. You know, they straight up admitted. Like, I'll find it right. I got it right here. Extinction Rebellion.
There's a reason these people are called watermelon greens, because they're green on the outside and totally communist red on the inside. Absolutely true.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this subject really does do my head in, because these people are constantly having their ideas pushed. As much as they love to claim, the government's not doing enough. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You're literally, thanks to COVID, they were considering doing climate lockdowns. Quite literally, they've already freaking already pushing all this full electric crap in 2030, which I work in the automotive industry. That is one of the most stupidest ideas you could have ever done. Quite frankly, because only 2% of the car market is full electric cars. You cannot multiply that by 50.
But they don't want Kizza, they don't want to. What they want is to make a car something way beyond ordinary, average, even middle-class people to be able to buy. That is the whole point.
Like electric vehicles are a disgusting rip-off. Like, I mean, I know full well to make an electric car, quote unquote, profitable, because even Elon Musk's overpriced Teslas are still not profitable, which makes me laugh. Which proves that if we actually had a free market, Tesla would have been gone within a year. Like, I'm sorry, like they're just not good. They're just not that good. I'm sorry, like you need another 50 years worth of battery evolution for them to even be on par with internal combustion engine vehicles, and even then, they're not going to stop developing.
100%.
Yeah, on the topic of the whole green industrial revolution. So, throughout human history, from the time copper was first mined, like 7,000 years ago, I think, up until this moment, like 75 million tons of copper have been mined so far. For this green industrial revolution to apply worldwide, you would have to mine 75 million tons of copper again in the next 30 years to sustain this sort of green revolution, which makes me think it's just going to be stillborn baby, like this whole crap about.
Well, I mean, Vulture.
No, it's bollocks. But the thing is, Mitch, everyone who's advocating for this knows it's bollocks. This is to make us all 21st century serfs. It's not designed to make anything better in the world. It's designed to make everything worse for people in Western nations. That is the real truth.
Yeah, I knew girls. Yeah, I knew girls at university who were saying they're not going to have children because of the environment, which happened to be very coincidental with because the whole climate crap, it coincides very coincidentally with the anti-white crap we also get. It's all just one big Ponzi scheme.
Oh yeah. But we can't have children to save the environment, but we need to import in millions upon millions of third worlders because of the pension scheme and all that. It's like, hold the F on. One, you could just not embrace feminism and just maintain the traditional family and just supercharged it, or better yet, maybe not have a terrible welfare scheme pushed by a freaking communist retard called Frank D. Roosevelt, who puts a system that was only built for the 1930s and didn't update to 2020s. I mean, quite frankly, I'm not sure if I'm the youngest guy here, but I'm not expecting a public pension by the time I retire at 80. Because I know full well the retirement age is going to be 80 by the time I get there.
Mm-hmm. If you're lucky, and you won't get a state pension, I totally agree. George, did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up?
Well, I did want to talk a wee bit about the Twitter files, but we sort of got to that. So
carry on those because they're quite interesting.
Well, I already brought up the main thing about it, which was the fact that the FBI was there. So, we don't know where this extends to. So, of course, we know that the CCP has their fingers in TikTok, for example. We do not know about we do not know, who controls what in terms of Facebook and the metaverse. shoot me for saying that. And so the Snapchat, which of course is another subsidiary of Facebook, of course, Mark Zuckerberg is not going to ever release that sort of information. So we can only guess. But like in terms of Twitter, what basically seems to be understood is that the United States government has effectively, because who owns, the people who use Twitter, who use Facebook, is basically everyone except China and bits of Russia and like a few other areas which have closed off internet. That's everywhere. So if you think about that in terms of scale, the United States government has had or has been policing what people have been saying, and certain algorithms have been controlling what people have been saying now. Now, we don't know when this started. It could have started in 2018. It could have started in 2016, but we don't know. But this has been going on for a very, very long time. And I guess that was just very interesting to me, because my original scope of understanding this was that basically you got a few people who set up some enterprises in San Francisco and other areas of California. And, people in those areas will typically tend to be liberal because they're normally going to be highly intelligent and highly creative people, which generally favors liberal thinking. And so I was just sort of like, okay, so that's probably what happened. These people sort of set up these companies and they sort of decided to lean a certain direction. What seems to have come about is actually far more pernicious than I previously imagined, because, these people basically let the federal government allow them to become purchased assets, and that extends to places like Australia, that extends to, India, that extends to Britain, of course, that extends to Europe. So I think that's I think that people have overlooked that, because when they've been looking through the Twitter files, they've been thinking, oh, well, how has this impacted the 2020 election? Which it may have and it may not have. But
it definitely did. It definitely did. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but like all this BS about Russia interfering with the elections, like, I'm sorry, it was overwhelmingly the Democrat establishment that did this. I mean, do we even have to bring up the Times Magazine article that straight up bragged about fortifying the election? And people say, oh, but that's Time Magazine. That don't mean anything. These motherfuckers were the same Times Magazine who bragged about rigging the Russian election that got Boris Yeltsin in charge in 1996.
All I'm going to say is that there has been no proven, numbers that go one way or the other in terms of there was enough fortification to do that sort of thing. What I would say, and what is actually far more interesting in terms of this, because that sort of just turns into an arithmetic game. What is actually far more interesting is actually the global implications, because the Trump escapade. I can honestly believe that in a scenario in which open ballots are encouraged, like they were in 2020, because everyone was locked up, I can honestly see that, because turnout always favors the left wing. That's a unique political. That's like a constant political algorithm.
George, are you actually saying that you think that 2020 wasn't fixed?
I'm agnostic on the issue, because like I haven't seen enough evidence from either side.
Okay. I would say this, George. Sorry to interrupt, but I would say this. They straight up admitted that in 2020 there was loads of voting regulation changes that pushed the mail-in ballot push, right? Sure. Which everyone knows is the most easiest way to fudge votes. Easiest proven way. Stuff. Yeah. And also in the Arizona audit, which I believe if memory serves, there was only 40,000 vote difference between Trump and Biden. They straight up admitted in the audit there were at least 50,000 questionable votes. Keyword there, questionable votes. Now that's enough to swing Arizona from blue to red. And what you do find is with the midterms, especially in Florida, they banned ballot harvesting and or what's the other, mail-in votes, right? DeSantis gets the biggest win of all the Republicans. All the places that maintain this stuff, where there were no changes, it was always very close, questionable places that counted their votes days after the election was over. I'm sorry, I don't care what anyone says. That's blatantly an exposure of they blatantly rigged it. As far as I'm concerned, all those elections that if you're still counting your votes after the deadline, sorry, it's null and void. It's null and void by default, and everyone who should be removed from being able to elect to run an election.
As far as I'm concerned, the 2020 US election was a con. The idea that Joe Biden is the most popular president.
No chance. Like
the most popular president the USA has ever had. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Did only a moron would believe that.
Yeah, and also to add that point, sorry to interrupt as well. Again, sorry. Just to add to that point, right? Donald Trump went from 53 million votes to 73 million votes. That's I'm pretty certain. Still, I'm pretty certain that is the biggest increase for a second election for a standing president by a country mile. Like, it's a consistent trend that presidents lose votes.
Well, that's actually the fact that Trump increased his vote share is actually an argument against this, because it indicates that, again, this was a turnout feature. To reiterate the previous algorithm, basically, as vote capture increases, it biases left wing. That's a
there's this they're always talking about it that with these elections, and especially with the midterm elections, it's not actually a popularity contest. It's literally vote harvesting. Like, the Democrats are way more active with literally just sending out minions to knock on doors and say, "Hi, who would you like to vote for? We're doing witness ballots," and then they just sign them up.
You get in the midterms. The midterms favor Republicans normally, and people go, "Well, why do midterms favor Republicans?" It's because midterms have lower turnout. Now, the reason why, the Senate kind of flopped this election for the Republicans was partly because they just chose terrible candidates. So you had Walker in Georgia, and then you had Oz in Pennsylvania, and they were both woefully uninspiring. Walker has said some pretty shady stuff in the past. Oz is just very boring, not very interesting, and so that was a huge notch against the Republicans in that respect. But also the fact is that the populations in places like Georgia and Pennsylvania have been changing for a while, and no one was really paying it. The Republicans weren't really paying attention. So again, like, the reason why I am ambivalent on 2020 is because like I can just see that it's entirely plausible that if you have a situation in which you're saying more people should send in mail-in ballots because of the pandemic, you're going to have higher turnouts, and higher turnouts will always favor Democrats. That's just the rule.
I would throw this. Sorry to interrupt you, but I would throw this curveball at you. If you, like, for example, if you look at like places where they basically said no to this, Republicans won hands down by a country mile, which ultimately proves that the Democrats are blatantly fudging their numbers.
No, that's not a proof. That's looking at things and then and I hate to be that guy because it's such
actually.
Come on, George, you're always that guy because
I'm just arguing that, like, if this was if you took what Florida did and made it nationwide, I would dare say Democrats would be lucky to get anybody in the Senate, except for like California and New York.
Like, that's a counterfactual that can't be proven. But all you have is that basically Republican states tend to say we don't like voting ballots. That does not actually in and of itself prove.
But George, everyone knows that, like, if you really want a fair vote, it should be counted on the day.
Not freaking a week.
Is that not true?
I don't like mail-in ballots personally.
Cool. That's all I wanted to hear you say. Cool.
But I'm also not out. It doesn't escape the possibility of my brain just to go, well, look, more people will have their fat ass on the couch and could sign a post-it stamp. What it takes, and most people who are ambivalent about voting normally because I don't want to go out and it's raining or whatever. Those people were now voting, so and again, like, you've got it back in.
And also quite a lot of
to
quite
reiterate
a lot
on the
of over
2022
100-year-old people.
To reiterate on the 2022 midterms,
quite a lot.
I don't care. Okay, to reiterate on the 2022 midterms, you've got a very similar turnout to what happened in 2018 because mail-in ballots were not as encouraged. They were encouraged in some states because that's what happens, but they were not as encouraged, and you got very similar turnouts. And basically, what it seems to have happened this time is that the independents didn't give enough of a fig, and Trump resentment is still pretty high in the United States because Republicans haven't gone over the fact that Trump is quite unpopular.
I see what you're saying. I totally see what you're saying, but why was it in 2020 so many over 100-year-old people voted for Biden?
I don't know. I haven't seen the data on that.
Well, I mean, like I said, the Arizona audit clearly showed major blatant effery. And I would dare argue in the audit, like I said, I try and find the article. If there was enough questionable votes that could swing it, I would dare say it should be null and void by default. Because you can't claim to be free and fair.
Gents, we're 121 minutes.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
I'm just going to ask, Tomb of Arminius says, anyone see the Aussie cricket team take the knee for Black Lives Matters? Freed up my summer considerably now that I can jettison watching the cricket. Was that the case? Did the Aussie cricket team take the knee for Black Lives Matter?
Wouldn't surprise me, if I'm honest.
Wouldn't surprise me in the least, but I mean, if they did, then why would you support them? Like, as a right of centre Australian, why would you support an Aussie cricket team that were cucks and took the knee for Black Lives Matter? Because as soon as you take that knee, you're a cuck. That's all you are. You're a cuck. You want some black guy to come and fuck your life, basically. Excuse me, but that is what it's about.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why the Conservative Party are referred to as the Conservative Party. But
for sure.
But then again, I would argue a proper conservative is an ultra traditionalist, and anything that's considered untraditional is considered blasphemous. But maybe that's me being too literal with the definition. What does everyone else think?
Well, I'm an Englishman. England is the best country in the world. Britain's the best country in the world. And anyone who doesn't think it is should fuck off.
Well, on that point, Duke, well, I would say, Duke, if I did find the magic lamp and gave my 3 wishes, my God, I'll make sure Rule Britannia is sung again. Especially with certain places in the world, that they will be not on one knee, but on both knees, singing Rule Britannia. And I won't give you the GP.
No, I don't want. No. Kizza, I don't want anyone else to sing it. I want every single British and Anglo-Celtic person to sing it. That's all I care about. So
I personally want the enemies to sing it, just so they know their place.
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far.
The Tree of Liberty is in a major drought and it needs watering.
Maybe. All right, let's move on. Mitch, did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up on the stream today?
I mean, we've already discussed that basketball American trade-off, so there's that. Not really much to be said about what I shared in my Discord earlier about Ukraine wanting the West to cancel Russian culture again. Not much to be said about that. And then there's a whole subject.
You're talking about Ukraine trying to cancel Rachmaninoff and great Russian novelists and all this kind of stuff, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, they tried to do it at the start of the war, but they're trying to do it again for some reason, other than... I mean, I don't know if it's just they're trying to get more impetus behind it because I don't know. I mean, personally, I don't think you could ever cancel Russian culture, but I mean, it fits in with the elite goals because I mean, you take Hymn of a Cherubim by Tchaikovsky. I mean, that piece of music, for example, is just it can motivate. That sort of music is the kind of music that can motivate the likes of me to attend church, for example.
Sure.
So that kind of music, it kind of fits in with the anti-white establishment, whatever. But I don't know. And then there's a topic.
I don't get it, Mitch. Like the Russians have provided a lot of great European culture. They just have. I mean, War and Peace, for fuck's sake, you know. It's like it's ridiculous to try and cancel Russian culture. It's ridiculous.
I mean, there's clear will on the part of them, because I mean, it is rather insidious that they wanted to cancel an entire country, because it's one thing cancelling a sitting president on Twitter, but now they're wanting to cancel an entire country's like historical and current cultural output. It's kind of
it's ludicrous. It's just ridiculous, and anyone who supports it is like a moron, basically.
Yeah, it's what I mean. Like I can remember, for example, seeing recently that alongside Julian Assange, right, they've got Edward Snowden because I can't remember what he said on Twitter, but he said something about being Western elite. I mean,
but they can't touch Snowden because Snowden's recently been given Russian citizenship, I believe.
Yeah, well, he did apply for it.
Yeah, he's got citizenship now. On the question of Snowden, I mean, he said something on Twitter about the West, and everyone just hounded him and tried to say, "Oh, he should be executed for treason." And I'm just like, mate, like this guy, like I'm just like,
I think I will say, Mitch, I think Snowden went a bit too far. Some of this stuff was like dangerous to Western assets. So I will say that. But Assange never did that. Assange never did that. Like he redacted loads of things to make sure that didn't happen.
Well, the issue is that with Assange, the main reason that especially the Democrats want him dead is that he's basically the man that helped cost Hillary Clinton the 2016 election.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
And that's what people forget.
What I think that's the truth. I think.
Yeah. Whereas with Snowden, he exposed how the U.S. government, especially under the Obama administration, were violating the Fifth Amendment.
100%.
So as far as I'm concerned,
100%.
both these men
that's what I think.
Could not only be exonerated from all charges, they should be. I mean, ultimately, I'm using this in the British context, should be knighted and have so much political protection that if anyone dares try to take him out, it would basically be declared as an act of war.
I'll be honest, I wouldn't protect Snowden, but then he doesn't need protection. He's a Russian citizen.
No. But I'm saying.
But I would protect Assange because
like
Assange,
me personally, yes.
He deleted loads of shit to stop people seeing any like Western intelligence assets, and he deleted all that shit. So why Britain is sending Assange to spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement in America, I do not understand at all. I also don't understand why the Australian government is not supporting him at all.
I mean, geopolitically, Britain and Australia are, it's in a rude way, but we're pretty much like the whores of America. Like, we will just prostitute our country.
100%.
It's sad, but it's true. It's sad, but it's true. But, like, ultimately, Duke, me and you disagree about the Snowden situation, but I would argue on the pure grounds of the US constitutional aspect, what Snowden did, like, he knew full well his head was going to be on the line. And ultimately, people like
Snowden gave too much information, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue the main fact that he pointed out how much the government was violating the Fifth Amendment. It's a shame that the US don't have the old spirit because, 1776 will commence again, as a certain infamous Alex Jones would say. But, I mean, the rest of the stuff I don't know fully well. But, like, he straight up admitted when he was in office, like when he was doing his job, like he used to say, like he used to constantly like go into various governmental, websites and into the system.
All right,
various
but
systems
all right. There's a slight difference because Snowden worked for the American military, so he had signed various agreements and made various oaths, whereas Assange was a journalist, and Assange actually did not pass all this shit out to the world. He made various things blank deliberately. But Assange is the bloke who's going to end up living the rest of his life in solitary confinement in a US jail.
Yeah,
and the Brits and the Australians are doing nothing whatsoever to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a joke. He should have been given complete, and like I said, should be completely exonerated or charged.
Just in the last couple of days, we've seen a few Western newspapers saying, well, actually, you shouldn't prosecute Assange. And you know why we've seen that? Because if Assange gets prosecuted, so will they.
Yeah, but like I said, it makes me laugh how, when Julian Assange first came onto the scene about this, what was it, back in 2011, was it?
Yeah.
2010, 2011, yeah? It made me laugh how the so-called anti-establishment so-called papers, and I use that term very loosely, of course, because it was like The Guardian and that, who were against the Tory government. And then all of a sudden, they changed their tunes very freaking quickly. And it makes me laugh how they try and say, "Oh, but it's about protecting me." It's like, no. This isn't about journalistic integrity. This is just about you being a good political puppet. Don't give me that BS. We all know most of you twats, excuse my French, all went to the same freaking schools. You all go to the same places. You're all in the same clubs and all that. We all know you're part of one giant group that us plebeians are not a part of. And also, yes, as being calling him a terrorist. Yeah, for that is an absolute joke. See, this is why the Oxford English Dictionary should be smashed across the people's skulls.
Auburn Vigili in the chat says Biden called Assange a terrorist for releasing info on literal terrorism being carried out in Iraq. And also, of course, on Joe Biden's son snorting cocaine off of assorted Ukrainian girls' arseholes. But, whatever.
Yeah, it makes me laugh at the amount of coping I see people trying to play defense of that or the Hunter Biden laptop stuff. I'm just like, they say, oh, it's Russian disinformation. As soon as I heard that, I'm like, no, it's legitimate. The fact they couldn't. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, anytime I hear something is disinformation, I'm like, no, it's fact. It's just fact. It's just inconvenient truth for your party. F off with that BS. But that's why I do hope in 2024 to use it to emphasize on the internet jokes. The king does return, and he turns up with a giant sledgehammer, and he is raging. And that sledgehammer shall be taken straight to.
I see no evidence that that's going to happen. But whatever.
No, I did say I hope. Keyword I hope. But then again, I mean, I'm not sure if it's going to. I'm afraid. I mean, people talking about DeSantis should run. Like, no, he should wait till 2028, really. Because
I kind of tend to agree with that.
Yeah, like Trump's got unfinished business, and I'm not saying this as a Trump fan. Like when he first running, I just thought it was just a giant political stunt. But then, considering what happened afterwards,
I kind of like Trump on the basis that everyone who hates Trump are the people I hate.
Yeah. But like what I'm saying is that like if he does go in, he has to go in. Like, I mean, I don't want to use a cliche term, but imagine a bull that is so mad that it doesn't matter what is in front of him, he's going to charge into it and smash it up.
We can hope, I guess.
I mean, if I were to use video game terms, just imagine Doom Guy when he finds out his pet rabbit got killed by demons.
Adam,
that level of rage. Sorry.
Fair enough. Adam, co-host of the stream. Did you have a first subject to bring up, mate?
No, I'm all good actually.
Really? You didn't have a first subject? I was hoping you would.
No, not from me. Not tonight.
All right. We'll go on to our next subject then. Pros and cons of leaving UK for pastures in inverted commas greener. What do you think, boys?
I mean, I'm not going. I wouldn't argue against doing that sort of thing because I mean, I'm a guy who's learning Russian at the moment to have the possible exit route of Russia. Like so.
Yeah, all right,
I mean,
guys. To let everyone know, like Mitch speaks good enough Russian and about 3 other languages that he could easily move there and have no problems. All right, carry on, Mitch. Sorry.
Yeah, credit to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I could speak languages like Mitch, but yeah, absolutely. Mitch, carry on. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, so let's say, for argument's sake, people in the Discord server or in here, like to say, oh well, they moved to Hungary. Although the only reason I wouldn't recommend that is because the languages are damn hard. Or let's say Russia for sake of argument, which if you end up there, I'll probably help you along the way. To be honest, because I mean that's probably my destination at the minute. But other countries, I was considering Spain at one time, but Spain just seems to be concentrated on becoming the lib shit capital of the Mediterranean at the minute. When you got Portugal, sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, Portugal is also persuaded on going that way because they're giving tax incentives to Silicon Valley types now. Italy seems to be the best bet because they seem to be more conservative compared to the likes of Spain and Portugal. I don't know anything about Greece.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you got Poland, who they're going to turn into Ireland in 10 years' time, just through like they're willing to just pause themselves into the dirt just for sheer hatred of Russia.
Hungary seems fairly base, Mitch. What do you reckon?
Well,
which country?
Hungary seems fairly based.
Yeah, the problem is the language is too hard to learn. That's the problem.
It's a very awkward language to learn. That I do know, but problem is most of the continent, like the only places you really want to go to, especially from a financial standpoint, really, is Germany or Switzerland.
Yeah, are there more
boring
boring countries in the world than Germany or Switzerland?
Yeah, but I'm saying
I'm not sure there are, to be honest.
No, but I'm talking from a financial standpoint. If we're talking in the context of Europe, I mean, maybe Scandinavia to a point.
Okay, let's expand this. Not in the context of Europe. Let's also expand this to taking into account the old Commonwealth countries, which in the old days were Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and even back in the day, South Africa. Let's look at those countries as well, please. Not just Europe, because I don't know. Like, why would you leave UK to go to another crap European country? I don't know why. I mean, I was a huge Brexit supporter, right? And Brexit has been totally fucked, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, you've got a freaking Tory party who never wanted to leave it.
Exactly right.
And it makes me laugh how
exactly right.
And it makes me laugh how so many people say, "Oh, but this was always bound to happen." I'm like, did you even pay attention to the freaking negotiations? You had someone who didn't want to leave negotiating to leave against who ultimately who they aspire to.
100%, 100%,
and then you have twats like James O'Brien trying to say, "Oh, but I was right. It's like, no, James, you're just an arrogant twat who's persistently proven wrong, but you're too much of a coward to admit it." I mean, like, I'll put it this way to explain the whole Brexit scenario for those who weren't around. Imagine this, right? I'll use Duke as an example, right? Imagine you and your wife had a bet, right? And you won the bet, and the bet was you had to sell the house, but it's the wife who's selling it. Does the house get sold? Now you have two answers for that. Either it doesn't, out of pure spite, or it does at such below market rate to force you to stay. That's what it will be.
Look, Brexit will never be real while Britain still belongs to the European Court of Human Rights. If we have to leave that to make Brexit real,
I would counter that saying the European Court of Human Rights is actually separate from the European Union, because that exists outside the European Union. But
it's the same thing.
Yeah, the problem. But here's the thing. The European Court of Human Rights does exist before the European Union actually existed, and even countries like Russia, and even I swear Israel's also a part of it.
But why? All right, Israel isn't a European country, and Britain is not really a European country. It's an offshore island. We have to leave the European Court of Human Rights for Brexit to be real. Unless we do, it's a lie.
Well, I would argue
it's a Brexit in name only, which is what we really have.
Yeah, which is just remain on inferior terms. But the problem is, Duke, is that if I negotiated it, it would have been so brutal for the European Union that, quite frankly, Donald Trump would be ringing me up and republishing his book after the deal, after my deal. And the big problem you have with this Brexit negotiations was the subject of the Irish
It was
border.
done by people who wanted to stay in the EU.
Yeah, there's that. But the big problem was the Irish question. Because of the Irish problem, no matter how you do it, we were going to get tied into it. And the only way you could have got around that was basically tell Ireland, sorry, mate, you're basically cut off from the European Union because of the way my deal's done. And even across the channel.
That's what Britain should have done. They should have said, well, I'm sorry, Ireland. Northern Ireland is part of Britain, and you are not. And we don't give a fuck.
No. But I'm not talking about regarding the Good Friday Agreement on the border.
And all of that was shit too.
Yeah. I
Tony Blair and Clintons and all the rest of it. Look, I'm a big supporter of Northern Ireland, and Britain should have said to the EU, look, Northern Ireland's part of Britain. You do what you want, but basically we're going to trade within Great Britain as we want to.
Yeah, I mean, but I would say, Duke, you would have laughed at my deal because it would have been so British bias. I would have made the Treaty of Versailles look like child's play against Germany.
Absolutely, 100%.
No. When I say how brutal we're talking, I'm talking 12 digits of brutality.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Mate, you don't understand how pro-British I am then, because that's exactly what I would have done. I would have starved Southern Ireland if necessary.
No. I'm not referring to Ireland. No, I'm not referring to Ireland. I'm talking about, for instance, to talk about the Brexit bill.
Yeah, go on.
I would have made the European Union pay me a very small bill of £400 trillion.
Okay.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Where the hell did I get this figure from, right? I'm sure that's running through your mind. I basically took the money.
It's actually not, because I detest the EU, and I would have just destroyed them in every single way I could.
Oh, no. But this is the funny bit, right? The money, that's just one part of it. I also have the Waters Treaty and the Legislation Treaty. And the Waters Treaty was basically any stretch of water within 1,000 miles of Britain, only we could fish in. And the legislation
I'd agree with that. Totally.
And the legislation board would have been, very simply, if there was a conflict between English law, I should say, English law and European law, English law reigns supreme. And any time any tries to undermine it, well, guess what? You're going to be prosecuted under English law. And with me as king, it's going to be more brutal.
Okay, I would just agree with that, mate.
That's why I say the Treaty of Versailles would have looked like child's play in comparison.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I would have done. And I would presume that's what any really pro-British government would have done. The thing is, we never had a really pro-British government. What we had was the Conservative Party lying and lying through their teeth, because loads of the people who run the Conservative Party wanted Britain to stay in the EU. In fact, most of them did. Yeah, most
of course
of them
they do,
did.
because what people forget is it was the Tory party under Heath, the filthy traitor, that took us into it in 1972.
And let's not forget that Edward Heath was actually well known at the time as rather, how shall we put this? He really liked little boys.
No.
He liked taking little boys on his yacht.
Yeah, I have heard the claims about him being a paedophile.
It's not claims, mate.
Oh, so we're talking a definite proof, like with Savile. Are we talking that level?
He was a Savile type.
Okay, right. But on that point though, and people seem to ignore the fact that he even tried back in the 60s. You know, this whole subject of the European question has been, it goes back even further than when we joined, because what people forget is it was de Gaulle, I forget who left, sorry. It was de Gaulle who technically only became French president because of us.
Yeah, and who, thank God, stopped Britain joining earlier.
Yeah. But here's the funny thing.
More power to de Gaulle.
No, but here's the ironic thing. Do you know why he stopped us from joining it to begin with?
Because he knew what the Brits were like.
No. It was out of spite. No, it was two reasons actually. The minor reason was we would get America involved with the project. America would basically slide in through us, which is true. Well, I mean, technically, America was already
to some degree it did, but I don't think it was totally.
Yeah. But the main reason was out of pure spite for what Churchill said to him after the war was over. Which he said, if I would choose America over Europe any day of the week, or something along those contexts.
No, look, what Churchill used to say, and like I am no fan of Winston Churchill, as anyone can tell who watches my streams. But what Winston Churchill said is that a true British man, when faced with the choice between looking inward to Europe or outward to the sea, must always say, we'll look outward to the sea. And of course, Britain is an island.
Yes.
And used to have the biggest navy in the world for a fucking reason.
Yeah, exactly. And like, honestly, it just does spy me, because I'm just like, where's that magic lamp? Because I would get this deal, and by the time I brought that deal back and I advertised it, because I thought of a funny way how to advertise it. You know how you had that big red bus that says we send 350 million a week to the European Union?
Yep.
I would have had a big red bus that says, King Kizza has secured 350 trillion pounds from the European Union. Let's rebuild Britain instead.
The vast majority of the votes for Brexit were based on stopping mass immigration.
Definitely.
That was 100% what most people voted on.
But the sovereignty part, that was part of it.
And this was why our political establishment went ape shit after it, because it was confirmation that the vast majority of Anglo-Celts in Britain wanted to stop mass immigration. And that's why all we've had ever since 2016 is a massive load of shit to try and destroy Britain, ending up with Rishi Sunak being placed as British Prime Minister with no election. That's why we are where we are now.
Well, I would dare argue. Well, if I was king, I would have it so only those who can trace their origins back to the Celts can be worthy of can even apply for leadership.
No.
Let's go that far back.
Anglo-Celts.
Sure, but I'm talking like let's go pure birthright.
Anglo-Celts.
Sure. Anglo-Celts, sure. Outsiders, sorry. Bye. You won't allow it. You wouldn't like us in charge, so let's be equal. Let's be equal in that factor.
Right.
But I do apologize. I do apologize for going on for the rest of the people here. I do apologize.
That's cool, man. All right, other guys.
I'm trying to settle a question here.
Yeah.
Who was the PM from like the 60s or 70s that was an enormous chungus? For some reason, I was
Harold
Wilson was pretty big.
Harold Wilson,
Right.
And
I think
it's
it was Harold
been
Wilson.
largely proven he was a Soviet asset.
Oh, that was blatantly obvious. I mean, let's be frank here.
No, it's
anyone
not him.
who grew up, Edward Heath was pretty fat himself.
Look, Edward Heath was
a nonce.
A nonce, basically. Harold Wilson before him was basically a Soviet asset.
Yep.
For the most part. And that has been very largely proven now.
Yeah, I mean, just look at all his policies, and then let's not talk about what happened. I mean, it's like I think it was Peter Hitchens pointed out very well how even though the party was advertised to have changed under Tony Blair, it never really did. It was just merely a new coat of paint.
Yeah, absolutely. It was always a communist party.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've actually ran into Peter Hitchens quite a few times because I live like a mile away from him,
Nice.
mile and a half from him. I've never actually properly spoken to him, but like
shake that man's hand for me, please.
Oh no! Like if I do run into him, if he's not busy, I'll gladly say hello to him. But I know
he ain't the worst bloke in the world. But
no, I'm not. No, it's just for me.
To bring it back to what we're talking about, he keeps telling people who are younger British people to leave.
Yeah, but like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand why he says that, but part of me is that is kind of like running away from the problem, like the same thing you have with the refugee crisis right now. They're running from the problem. It's like if all the people like my age, I'm not sure how old everyone else is here, but like those of my age group, late 20s, early 30s, the people who are going to be the spine of the economy. We're just packed up and left. Well, where do we go? Where do we go? United States, the rest of the Commonwealth, and then what happens to Britain? Well, I'll turn to like freaking like basically how India and Pakistan are right now.
You're just going to brain drain it, basically.
Yeah. I mean, like the brain drain did happen in the 70s. That
you're going to tip it over the tipping point. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. I guess I must ask our various guests to say their point on should you stay or should you leave. And I'll ask Chris first. Now, Chris, of course, is in Australia, and that's one of the countries that a Brit might leave to.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean,
go for it.
That's I've sort of brought this up a lot, especially with the English chaps that I was sort of hanging out with at the event in August, and that's that. Coming from an outsider. Looking in, I sort of went in with the expectation that I was just going to find this sort of desolate, diverse hellscape where it's spot the white wherever I go. But I was really surprised at all the places that I sort of went to and was chaperoned through in some cases is that, the more people you encounter and the more you spend time in the town, like compared to Australia especially, or any other sort of satellite Anglosphere sort of country, the spirit of like the Englishman is still extremely fucking strong. And I keep saying that it was represented, well, a lot of people say it was also represented by the turnout of the Queen's passing. And that is just like, that is an inbuilt sort of part of the character of the Brit that is still really, really present. And it is just basically in a state of sleep. And I just fear that if everyone just sort of runs away, then that's basically that over. And I mean, like, what, you gonna go to fucking Spain, Italy, like all these places are going the same direction. Italy might have a bit of a push back against it, but for the most part, everywhere you go, it's going to be the same problem. You're better off staying put and basically cocooning while we wait for this to pass. It's sort of it's maybe a little bit optimistic to some people, but I mean, coming from someone who is, literally a descendant of the throwaway convicts that was sent away. And then what I would call coming back to the motherland. It really is home. Like, it really does feel like home. And it always will. But yeah, if everyone leaves, then that's over. That's gone. So yeah, I don't know. It depends what your priorities are. Like, do you want to chase economic advantage, or do you want to stick to something a little bit more transcendental and a little bit more tied to your roots? Yeah. Do you want to be materialist, or do you want to stay and remain as a Englishman? That's all my thoughts on it. I'm very tired.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I mean, in my case, I don't know anyone else in the Discord server like why they want to leave the UK, but it's like, in my case, it's what. So when I was at university, the people who I got on with were mainly Eastern Europeans, like you're talking Hungarians, Russians, that sort of thing. So for my part, I mean, I can see myself moving to Russia just because I've met Russians personally. I know their mentality, so I know I could just fit in.
That's a fun way to put it.
Yeah. I mean,
look, to be fair to Mitch also speaks pretty good Russian. And I can see that. There's a really good channel on YouTube called, Mitch might remember, but it's like it's an Australian chick who married a Russian bloke and now lives in Russia. And she does these videos where she speaks in Russian, but there's English translations under it. And like, she seems to be getting on really good, you know. And most of the Russian people she meets seem to be nice people. And they're not fooled by this nonsense about, you know, men and women are exactly the same. They're not fooled by this shit anymore.
Well, because they lived under it. They already dealt with all that propaganda.
Yeah, maybe they did under the communists, maybe. But Mitch, you'll know the channel I'm talking about because you.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'll search for it. I'll search for it in a minute. I can remember you sharing it in the Discord, so I'll look for it.
Yeah, and like she's quite a pretty girl, and seems to be going on famously there, you know. And her bloke seems a nice bloke, and what more can you ask, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I come close twice to packing up and leaving England, but first time it didn't happen due to complications, and then the second time was due to the fact when I was planning on going, it would have started off as being the best man in a wedding in Vegas. But then sadly, my friend at the time sadly died got T-boned off his bike. And
well, that's
yeah, I know. Makes it worse that the twat who did it was, to use the politically correct term, an illegal alien.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so because I've known the guy since 2010, and I was going to go to his wedding, but which would have been January 2017, and who knows, I would have gone over there. And considering my skills in that, I could have easily found a job there, got a freaking green card, and perhaps started a new life.
This is the point I'm trying to make. Like, can British dudes do better by leaving rather than staying? And I'm not sure. I mean, get that people like Chris will say to me that if everyone leaves England or Britain, then obviously we're totally fucked. But on the other hand, like my son even says to me, my son is in the Royal Navy in the Fleet Air Arm, and he's very reluctant to leave the Royal Navy because he has these dreams. And I really would prefer him to do so because why die for the gay, you know?
Yeah, true that.
But he says, look, Dad, if I left the Royal Navy, I'd probably leave England. And he probably would, because, like, he'd probably go and try and work for Qantas or somebody. But whatever. The point I'm trying to make is there a solution to this? Because I don't see it. And I do see why people want to leave, but I also see why people say, well, we shouldn't,
I mean, the problem is it's a case of, like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. The problem is, in order to fix the problem, you're going to need almost like an even more aggressive, like Trump-like wave through British, politically speaking, in order to happen. Maybe reform takes off with Richard Tice? Richard Tice, him with Farage, and, like, so many, like, pissed off, angry, so-called, I don't like to use the term young conservatives, but, like, just extremely angry young men of, like, my age group who are so angry.
And there are a lot.
Ironically enough, not to advocate for a revolution, not advocate for, like, a French or Russian style revolution, but basically have, like, their own, like, Trump wave, like, realignment, to the point where they get in, they rip up so much of, like, the last 60 years worth of legislation and basically majorly change course, that the only way it goes back on that course would effectively require a nasty revolution by the opposition, per se. But, like, the problem is that I try not to be a doomer of this. I try not to take black pills on this, but it does get tricky day and day. And for me, it's much harder to leave now, considering I have like nieces and nephews now, which I didn't back then, and I don't personally want to be absent from their lives. So I have that problem, whereas, like, before, back in 2016 or 2013, when I first considered this, I didn't have that worry. I was, I basically finished college, not long finished after college, just jumping by job from job, like little shitty jobs. Right now, I'm in my stable employment for, like, over 9 years. I now got very young nieces and nephews. I don't want to lose that time, because that first few years is precious. No, I can't speak for everyone.
Bless you, mate.
Bless you, by the way, Duke. Anyone else want to chip in?
Yeah, well, that's the thing too, isn't it? Once that's the domesticating effect of having kids as well. I mean, if you all had kids, you wouldn't be going anywhere, because it's basically, unless you're quite wealthy, it's impossible to uproot and leave when you've got kids.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working class through and through. I'm working class through and through. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if I had the lottery, like, if I won the Euro Millions lottery, which is like, what, 115 million? You damn right I'm buying myself and all my family members nice freaking houses, and we're just going to retire, and I'll find a nice girl and be like, look, dear, we don't have to work. We could have, like, 20 babies. I know that's crazy to say to a woman, you're going to make me have 20 babies. I'm just saying that for exaggerated effect, but I'm just like, look, Leah, we're good. We're good. But ultimately, that's very unlikely. We're not like, these super wealthy people who are basically anywheres, to use that phrase. We are all somewheres. We all have roots somewhere, whereas anywhere, as far as I'm concerned, anywhere should have no idea. Thought they should be made stateless. But that's enough for Fed posting, as I'm accused of.
What's your view on it, George?
Well, everyone, I've said it a lot of times. I know that people hold out hope, but the numbers that, because I am autistic numbers guy, for me it looks like a fait accompli. And there are times in which you can say, I'm going to fight for a group, which is like, fine, in fact, that's probably a good thing. That's probably a healthy response you should have. But there's also times in which you realize that a certain group is FUBAR. Britain is FUBAR. By any prediction you can have, like, there is just, it's FUBAR. You can do a whole bunch of Fed posty shit, which I do not endorse in any way, shape, or form. And even if you did that, you're going to be stuck with the fact that British people, English, Scots, Welsh, and Irish, have in the younger generations an incredibly, incredibly liberal component. And these people aren't breeding.
Exaggerating, George.
I'm not exaggerating because No, I'm not actually, and I'm tired of being told that I'm not exaggerating because that's the numbers. Okay.
Well, I mean, the referendum was a prime example of this.
Brexit failed badly, didn't it, George?
No. I'm just talking like young voters specifically.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm just saying Brexit failed badly, didn't it, George?
Well, I don't understand what that's saying about anything.
Well, like Brexit was basically an anti-mass immigration vote, and it failed badly, didn't it? That's why Brexit won.
So look, here's the reality. If you think about a political solution, it's not happening. The reason it's not happening is because, first of all, you probably have about 20 years to do it in. And realistically, 5. If that party gets
10 to 15.
It's realistically.
UKIP started in '93, and it went
you have to remember. You have to remember that we already have a natural experiment of how European people vote in these sort of situations, and it's called the United States. And to this day,
the Americans are not European.
It's a natural experiment. It's the best, and it's the best evidence we have. So you can put your fingers in your ears. I don't really care. Oh my god!
George,
will you let George speak or what?
I will, but George, you only use the American story when it suits you. When it doesn't, you'll turn around and say, "Well, that's not the Brits."
What are you talking about? It doesn't suit me.
Well, you would like if I turn around and say to you that, like, if you look at the American midterms, the people who overwhelmingly voted left were women who are not married, and it doesn't matter if they were not married at 18 or not married at 25 or not married at 50. You won't take any notice of that, but you will.
Well, I haven't seen the I haven't seen the evidence, but that could well be true.
Fine, you've
just leveled an accusation actually without any substantiation in the previous conversation, which is fucking ridiculous.
Go check it out, and if I'm lying, come on next week and tell me I'm lying.
Right. So what I was going to say is that basically it's a fait accompli, because statistically speaking, in terms of, we are, the conservative right in Britain is reliant on the boomers. And the boomers have 2 concerns. One, they want their house prices to go up, and 2, they want their pensions to go up. The tertiary concern is their cultural preservation. But like, if that goes awry, then they won't care. So you've got a situation in which is housing, rising housing in housing prices. It's not going to be. It's going to be really hard for people to manage to have 2 kids in this country. And then, of course, you need to ask the question: do you even want to have? Do you think you can even reasonably do justice to children raising them in this country? The answer to that, to me, is pretty much no. In terms of the economics of it, being in Britain, if you've, unless you're breaking into the high 5 figures, so you're making 80 grand by the time you're in your late 20s, you're also in a lot of economic trouble, and you're probably not going to buy a house. So in terms of the overall sort of situation, like, I would say fuck it. In terms of, there is this sort of the thing in which Britain is probably going to, like much of the Western world is probably going to go through a series of problems. And of course, over the next 100 years, you are going to see a change in the sociological status of the nation. That being said, that's a long way off. I'm going to be dead in 100 years. I would describe myself as someone in his early 20s as basically someone who is watching, is at the point at which Attila has gone into Western Rome and has started pillaging the Po Valley. It's at that sort of stage. Chronologically, not of course in terms of event to event. And so, institutions are getting stickier and they're getting less able to solve problems. The bureaucracy is sky high. The government, has a back to its wall in terms of welfare payments. There's no way the government's going to be able to cut its expenditure. And so again, which is a part of the thing I brought up about how we're probably going to become a dollar subsidiary over the next 10, 20 years. This country is fucked. It is fucked in every single way I can imagine. Of course, never mind the fact that your children might get, pilloried off the streets. What's the point here being here? There's no fucking point. I know that people love to go, well, Royal Britannia, blah blah blah. I don't buy it. There is such a thing as loving your country, and then there's also such a thing as being a sucker. I think staying in Britain is being a sucker at this point.
Well, that's one view, George.
I mean, I can't say he's not wrong though. He's not exactly wrong though, because it's literally right now, especially thanks to the COVID lockdowns, it's literally just a slow motion car crash. And the only way we recover,
I don't disagree with you on that. I think you're right. I strongly suspect that as I go around the panel, everyone is going to agree with George. Mitch, what do you think?
I mean, I can't really disagree with what George said, to be honest. I mean, I've already laid out my reasons for, possibly going to Russia, but then what George said just further adds to that. So, what more needs to be?
Adaman seems to have gone, and I've sent him another link. But
he might have to go for me.
I was hoping he would maybe give us a different view. But I totally see what Ollie is saying. I do agree with what Chris thinks is that if everyone leaves England and Britain, then of course we're fucked. Because if everyone leaves, we are fucked.
Well, that's why I put the damned if you do and damned if you don't. It's such a no matter how you slice it, either you'll stay, either go very, I don't like using this term, but ethnocentric and just basically breed like rabbits and become very territorial with your tribe, quote unquote.
Yeah, which would be a bad thing.
But, and I mean, what I was saying about it might have sounded like sort of romantic, over optimism, but it has to be factored in too. It can't just be purely material analysis. I mean, even if you are maybe considering the demographic turn, I mean, don't get me wrong. I smash my head against the desk when I read census statistics and I read the demographic statistics that come out more and more.
Don't get me started on that.
So I fully understand it, but there are still pockets, and I think that it would just be a waste to just let it die. Considering how much, as I was saying earlier, how much of the country is still quite mono-ethnic and
basically outside of the major cities.
Outside of the major cities, obviously. The cities,
Cumbria, especially Cumbria.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. You've literally got a shot. You've literally got a Hobbiton shot.
It's not just Cumbria. Go to Devon. Go to Cornwall. Even a lot of the home counties outside of London are still.
Someone was saying in the chat earlier, Chris, even Coventry. And I was like, well, Coventry, no, in the middle of it, but all the surrounding locales around it,
Yeah.
just fully English. Like there was a lot of towns that I was going through where I literally did not see a single non-white, non-English person. So
I live in a college town, to use the phrase of the Americans. So
yeah,
I mean, I was shocked it's not as diverse as I thought it was, considering what certain areas are like. If you look at the grand scheme of things,
I mean, look,
Mitch
is a Midlands guy, and I'm quite sure that Mitch would say there are many places in the Midlands outside of Birmingham that are still like, I don't know, 95% British. Mitch, what are you at? If you're listening.
He might have actually muted himself, or
hang on, he might be doing something else.
Okay.
But but like as I said, Mitch is a Midlands dude, and I'm sure, like if not in Birmingham, obviously, and one or two other areas of the Midlands, but like if you live in a village somewhere around there, I'm sure it's still 90 or 95% British.
Okay,
Mitch, you back?
Yeah. So I live in like a smallish town not far from Birmingham. It is getting diverse. Like I've noticed a mix of Pakistanis who can't speak a word of English, and I've also noticed a lot of Ukrainians who, oddly enough, they speak Russian, so I can understand a lot of what they're saying. So that's what's happening in my town. Is I wouldn't be surprised if there's a hotel somewhere in my town where there's just loads of like Ukrainians and Pakistanis there, just helping to diversify my area. Birmingham is lost. The bigger towns, like medium-sized towns, peri-urban areas, whatever you want to call them, they're getting diversified. The villages are 100% white. There's a village where, let's say I want to go hiking up Cannock Chase, for argument's sake. I will go to a specific village. I won't name it. It is completely white. It still has those red telephone boxes from the old days. It is
cool.
Yeah, it is pretty much a time capsule to like 1950s Britain. So, the villages are pretty much untouched by a lot of the pos. Of course, the young uns might consume like Netflix, but in terms of like demographics, for example, no, it's not touched by what Birmingham's going through.
I mean, the other thing that you're missing is that, first of all, there is going to be outflow, and there's also going to be the fact the Greenbelt is about to literally fall apart. It's basically being held up by NIMBY Tories at the moment, and then the Tories are going to get wiped out. Everyone in Labour want to tear down the Greenbelt, so a lot of the towns around sort of London, Birmingham, Coventry, those sort of areas they're gonna become conurbations, and and also remember that it's not just your life you're talking about. You're also talking about your kids' lives. So your daughter will probably have to go to school, and that might have to end up being in the city.
She could be George. She could be homeschooled.
Well, first of all, that's unlikely because it looks like the Labour government are gearing up to either restrict it as highly as possible or straight up abolish it. The Tories came close this time round with the education bill. I mean, that was effectively doctored out of existence. But next time round, I do not see homeschooling lasting. Also,
so you think Labour will ban homeschooling?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I would agree, but
not to mention the fact that we can talk about how ideal homeschooling is, but it's really hard to achieve. Normally the bloke is going to have to be raking in a reasonable sum for even to make that possible. Particularly given that homeschooling is ideally done in a house, not in a wee apartment.
Especially your own home, not in a private, where you're renting.
Look, Lydia Shaw in our chat does homeschooling in Australia, And what you need to have is like a group of people to do it properly. Because then you have various academic areas that parents can teach. So yeah.
I mean, me personally, like, I would gladly homeschool my freaking niece and nephews if I had the means to do so. I wouldn't trust quite frankly, because I got the brains of the family. But even then, it's like, I mean, hell, if I'm not sure, Duke, if you know of what's his name, Radlib, who's friends with AA.
Yeah, I know Radlib. He seems a very, very, very nice man.
Yeah, like he's got, him and his wife got 8 kids, and they all homeschool them all. And I'm just like, God, you as a married couple are troopers in that field. But I imagine,
but let me just say one thing. Sorry. The way homeschooling works in America, and I think the way it would best work in any other country, is a group of parents doing it so that their various academic achievements can complement each other. Like, it's not just one parent or 2 parents teaching their kids what they know. It's a group of parents, and some of them are good at maths, and some of them are good at science, and some of them are good at history, and some of them are good at English. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Like, for me, like, if I were to homeschool my niece and my nephews, I'll deal with all the STEM stuff, because that's my main strength. My main strength is STEM, because that's the most important things, I would say. Obviously, there is English in that, but I wouldn't bother with too much about Shakespeare. I'll just focus much more on the language and how to write properly. Because, my God, kids today, they cannot write to save their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they struggle to even speak English these days, let alone write.
Yep. 100%.
I mean, yeah, but I think, this is all by the by, because, if homeschooling is going in the way of the dodo, which it looks like is likely, it's
homeschooling.
Yeah, so
no way. Unless you're talking about it in England. Are you talking about?
I'm talking about it in the UK. So basically, there was an education bill that the Lords had proposed to the Commons about 6 months ago, which basically planned to make homeschooling require the local schools permission.
They wanted to make it illegal,
because parents up to this point had sort of the implicit right that they could say, I'm taking my kid out of school and home educating them. But now the school can straight up say, no, we're having your kid now.
Was that just in Scotland, George? Or
no, that was proposed in the House of Lords.
But did it pass?
But does it look like it's going to pass?
So basically, it got doctored this time, but Labour were really enthusiastic about it. And if Labour,
so George is saying next time it might pass.
Yeah, I'm 100% confident that the Labour Party.
Labour definitely love their institutionalised kids. That's for sure.
I mean, they're already gunning for private schools. And to be clear, as someone who was privately educated, private schools are not like a unique sort of they'll get their get out of jail free card. They're not.
No,
they're plenty pos too.
Yeah,
so
like
100.
So you've got that. You're going to be an economic serf in terms of taxation in this country. So your kids, to sum up, your kids probably have some pretty terrible prospects if you raise them here. You yourself will probably not be able to wield a good income. You'll be paying for boomers, and you'll be living in a wee fish hut, aka a flat or a chicken coop, for the rest of your life. The energy bills, of course, are probably not going to recover themselves. In terms of where people think, where they go. I mean, it really depends if you've got some really marketable skills, I would think about trying to get to Florida or Texas or something like that.
Yeah.
But or even better, if you can work from home, go to somewhere really fuck off remote in somewhere like North Dakota. But the reality is that most people will not be able to do that because immigration to the United States is very hard. So
you don't have to go to the USA. There are other places.
You don't have to, but that's the place in which I think you will probably continue to see the largest amount of autonomy given to individuals.
You've sort of swayed me a little bit, because one of the the sort of back of mind guiding principle for this sort of optimistic view was like under the provision that you could homeschool your kids, and if they make that impossible, then that's the last of your defenses against it, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
worry.
Yeah, that's a very good point that the person put in there. But Bayaki is his name. Yeah, I mean, it's not just that as well. You also got, United States. Like, problem is people forget like all the states are ruled individually. So even though there's ones that are garbage that you would never go near, one touch a 10-foot pole, there are ones where you could easily go to. Like I said, I was considered almost going to Vegas, with Arizona, of course, but like Texas looked very, very attractive at the moment. With DeSantis is Florida, that looks very attractive for men like us. So, but again, like a lot of these things could turn very easily, though. That's the problem.
I don't. The reason I don't think that's going to happen is because first of all, millennials were supposed to have a right with drift by now. Like in terms of the way the voting behavior should have happened, most millennials are now reaching their 30s. They're supposed to be married and own houses. They do not. They are
be drifting conservative.
Yeah, then it's not happening. Yeah. So the conservative vote in all these countries is increasingly dependent on older and older people. And like the reason why that's still viable is because healthcare is still reasonably good in most countries, so most people still live until their 80s. But like the reality is that millennials are a very, very liberal group. Gen Z
live rather than live. When you say live, you really mean exist.
Well, whatever. Gen Z are, again, people were hoping that like Gen Z would like be a fight back. That has not happened. What has happened with Gen Z is that the right of Gen Z is more radical, but everyone else is exactly where they should be in terms of the millennials. This idea that there's an upcoming conservative revolution in the works from a sociological perspective is just it is fool's hope. It is fool's gold. I recall someone bringing up the idea that was happening, and basically they brought
Paul Jason Watson tried claiming that Gen Z were going to be the most conservative group since.
Well, this is sort of proving the culture is downstream from law theory
or politics. Yeah,
because it really is the case. It's literally the case that all of those sort of organic natural swings that they said were emergent phenomena amongst the demos is like it's obviously always been from the top down in whatever's encoded. Look how quickly like upwards of 70% of the population just adopts whatever the regime passes down. They just accommodate it and assimilate it into their personality.
But just to add to George's point as well, it's like Gen Z are by far the most psychologically damaged and addicted generation I think mankind's ever seen. Like
they have the additional like sort of wrecked characteristic by the fact that they have no anti-fragility whatsoever. They've never actually been physically or psychologically tested properly in any meaningful way in their formation years. So they're all literally just like trauma. They're all like trauma is so easily handed to them. From the most minor things.
Well, yeah, but it's like for me now as a young millennial, like I remember most people my age, like we grew up on South Park and Call of Duty lobbies, so we learned very early on to have a thick skin. But what makes me laugh is a lot of millennials who are older than me are the ones that pushed a lot of this major censorship, what they call not helicopter moms, but basically bulldozer moms that basically moved all obstacles away. That created a lot of the problems with the Gen Z generation and what's it called, Generation Alpha, the next one. Like a lot of the kids in that group, I'm very worried for, especially with my friend Aidan Paladin when she was doing research on IQ rates of kids who had to be schooled through COVID. There's as much as the 30-point IQ drop. From every other group, which is extremely detrimental.
Well, here's the other thing too, that if you believe what Edward Dutton says, that the only actual increase in intelligence that was happening in the past sort of 30, 40 years was in aggregate, it was averaging out IQ based on specialist IQ rather than a specialized IQ rather than general IQ.
Yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me if I'm honest, because
basic. Yeah, so that's basically what it's called. It's called the Flynn effect, and it's basically like people of current generation are very good at looking at things on paper and writing things down. And so if an IQ test is essentially looking at some information and writing it down, as opposed to people of previous generations who would have had more applied things. A classic example that Flynn himself, who was the guy who researched this, brought up is that, like, if you give someone from North Africa an IQ test and you talk to them, it's like, okay, so in Germany, I'm riding a horse from here to here. How long would it take for me to ride the horse? He will reply, don't they have a camel? And he's not being stupid when he says that. It's just generally he can't. He's never been taught to use that abstract area of his brain.
Well, yeah, actually, it's funny you mention that, actually, because Thomas Sowell, the Chicago economist, black economist, he pointed out that when the IQ test was first invented, a lot of people who weren't used to abstract thinking scored very low on it. Like, they pointed out that when it was first invented, Jews in like Germany were averaging an IQ score of 90, because abstract reasoning was not a common thing outside of Western Europe.
Yeah. So what you're basically witnessing when people talk about declining intelligence is basically you're talking about this thing in your brain, which is the same reason why, general intelligence is the same reason why you can solve you're really good at math problems, and you're also really good at, I don't know, climbing trees.
Yeah, not just that, it's the classic polymath archetype, which has disappeared.
Well, kind of, because it's not exactly that, because of the way, because intelligence does lead to a specialization of a sense. It's just not in the same way the Flynn effect works. But
because if memory serves, isn't it like, even though you have the general IQ test, isn't it there's like 8 specific forms of intelligence that people specialize in?
So the IQ test, basically the IQ test will measure different areas. So, for example, memory span. So I give you a bunch of numbers and you remember them back, and then there's also block assembly, in which you have to assemble blocks into a certain picture. And so those are all basically trying to approximate this thing called G, which is basically your general workhorse in your brain. But you will score better in some areas than others. And some areas are also more closely aligned with G. We call them more G loaded.
Yes.
Such as verbal scores. But like either way, like that overall workhorse thing is declining. And it's basically that artifact has been lost in the fact that we renormalize the IQ test every generation or so it always stays at 100. But yeah, we are genuinely getting thicker.
You can see it. You can fucking see it.
Well, but I think part of that is because I remember a TED talk about this where a guy was trying to shill for UBI, is that a guy who was a farmer did 2 IQ tests, and it was one before the harvest and one after the harvest, and there was, I think memory serves, a 12 to 15 point IQ increase.
That didn't replicate. That study did not replicate the actual.
Did it not replicate?
No, the thing is that it's dropping, and it's because this is not as bad as people think it is. It's basically a sociological correction, because who are the smart people? Smart people are liberal. The smart people are the upper class. The smart people are the elite. So the people who are breeding that you want to have kids like are religious fundamentalists who are not as smart. And like we have a bad habit of venerating intelligence too much, in my opinion.
Oh yes.
So like sort of prime example of this.
Like we're gonna probably have a lot of technological decay, like the 7th and 8th century of European civilization, or the 10th and 11th of Chinese civilization. Like you're just gonna have people who are just we're just not going to be good at keeping things, and we're probably going to lose some technology.
The technical decline is basically really just the slowing down and stalling of innovation, full stop, which is exactly what's happening. So
I think
whether or not that goes backwards, I don't know, but it's definitely not going forwards.
Well,
it's just reiteration, and that's it.
Well, you have these fluxes, like what both you two were saying. It's like you have the so-called European strong age of like the early centuries, and then you had the downturn, and then you had, to replace it, you had the so-called golden age of Islam, which in reality was just them stealing everything we had.
It was a load of bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And then obviously we went through a dark age, and then we had then we came out of it, and then we had the so-called Enlightenment era. So you have these waves. It's like, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, even technology goes through this. You get to a point of a certain tech where you reach its end goal, and therefore it doesn't improve. And that's where you have your so-called revolutions, where something else comes along to replace it. That's the issue. And like, I think right now it's going to get to a point where, especially with the way people have, everyone seems to have ADHD these days. I would say a lot of it's just poor discipline.
Wow, me too.
Sugar in their diet. Yeah, they definitely have way too much sugar in their diet than they should do. They're eating way too many carbs than they should do. I mean,
you can actually watch it A and B with a child, whereas for some reason the parents don't actually ever learn this lesson. They just think that giving sugar to a child is fine, or they might say to themselves,
sorry to interrupt, Chris, but I know this from where I had to go to a school which had loads of kids with so-called ADHD, and you could tell straight away which kid was on Ritalin and which wasn't. Because it was just blatant 90-day defect, and no one talks about what the effect of all these drugs have done to the children, for especially older millennials, maybe young Gen X. I think is when they really started doing it.
I was just having a conversation with our friends last night. We had a little dinner party thing going on, and the topic of Ritalin and stuff came up because I was put on Ritalin when I was a young kid, very young. I was about 6 or 7. And I only lasted about 6 months because I hated it so much, because it literally just turns you into a zombie if your neurological sort of wiring is such that you lack a sort of dopamine receptor. There's like a dopamine imbalance going on with the receptors, and then whereas if you actually have that sort of what they call the actual classic ADHD, it will actually do what it's supposed to do, but it is fucking an intolerable, insufferable experience to be on the drug when you're a child, because it completely suppresses all of your enthusiasm and actually just being a kid. And I started again when I was an adult in university, because I literally needed it because I couldn't focus, and I noticed that it would make me super depressed after a few weeks, and I got really bad depression, and I was just like, they're fucking feeding this to kids at mass and bigger doses than what I was given.
Exactly.
It's insane.
Exactly. And also, people point out in the chat, full of kids, sugar, making and this will piss me off is that I'm sure all of you are aware of the war on boys in the education system. Okay, but for those who are unaware, policy thanks to second wave feminists from the 60s and 70s that basically altered the education system to bias towards girls. And because boys are not like girls, they treated the boys like defuncted girls. Hence why they push all this Ritalin stuff onto it. Right. And then they're wondering why now a lot of young men are quite dysfunctional compared to, let's say, their grandfathers were. Yeah, highly effeminate and quite dysfunctional, right? And compared to their grandfathers. And it's like, hang on a sec, you created this mess, and now you want the people who weren't allowed to say to fix this problem. No, you reap what you sow, either deal with it or kindly get out of the way. And quite frankly, every time I hear kids got ADHD or ADD, I'm just like, no, your kid's just ill-disciplined and you are a terrible parent.
Yeah, not just discipline. It's a combination of basically complete absence as an authority in the house, and also sugar, and also overstimulation.
Especially with screens and that.
It's just a complete perfect storm for exactly what we're seeing. And I'd say 95% of the kids that are diagnosed are not. They're just a part of those major factors that contribute to that behavior. Exactly. I know of it myself. As I said, I was put on it as a kid, but then I look at the fucking stuff that I was eating as a kid, sugary fucking garbage, and literally whenever I was deprived of that stuff, I would become normal.
Exactly. And that's what people don't understand. It's like sugar, the addictive nature of sugar, and also just eating loads of carbs.
Yeah,
it's just like crack. I'm sorry, ultimately, I'm not a man who has kids of my own yet, but I do have 2 nephews and a niece, right? Especially with my niece, because she's a girl, right? And she loves her uncle. But I try and minimize any interactions with like screens whatsoever, like especially on the phone. Because I know full well how possessive that stuff is. Like people talk about the whole chime to hypnotize people. My God, a phone screen to a child is so effective. It's deadly.
Yes.
Like they'll literally watch it. They'll ignore everything and just stare at it, and they will follow it with their eyes. Like that's how. So I try and minimize that completely when it comes to technology. And I was a kid who, at 4 years old, was playing this Mega Drive with my uncle, playing Streets of Rage 2. Like I know what this stuff does from experience, and I would not do it. I mean, hell, there's even like talks of like Bill Gates and these people who don't allow kids, high tech or very limit them how much time they have with it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying we should have copy China with trying to limit how much time you have playing video games, but I'm just saying, like parents, you really need to step up. You really need to step up out there. Now, ultimately, those who are aware, obviously, I'm not talking about you.
I would go further than that and say, if up until the point of, I don't know, late teenage years, literally just no media allowed. And if they are to play video games or something, it's 1 hour on Sunday and that's it.
Yeah, fair. Like minimize time. Yeah, like smartphones, definitely not until they're like freaking 14. Yeah, smartphones not till they're 14, and definitely no freaking social media. I don't want to see a Twitter. I don't see an Instagram. I don't want to see a Facebook.
No.
I don't want to see, like, at most, I will tolerate maybe Telegram and WhatsApp. At a push.
Because you can indoctrinate them in another direction.
Very funny. But very funny. But I'm just saying, like, stuff like that. Basically, anything to minimize dopamine use. Increase.
Exactly.
Just minimize that. It's got to be all about delayed. What's the word? Delayed gratification. You got to have that, because once you're overstimulated, you're going to basically no different to a junkie, and you're going to be fucked. There's no recovery at that point.
Yep.
Just ask any addict. Well, I should say ex-addict. They have to go through such an aggressive cold turkey to get out of it. I mean, if you want a prime example of this, just look up Resurrection of Jake the Snake Roberts.
Well, I mean,
took him 3.5 years.
Yeah, you can see it as soon as like you take away their iPad or their iPhone from them and watch how they react. They are literally junkies. They react exactly like a junkie that's had his drugs taken away.
Like me, like
exactly the same.
I'm not sure if I'm the youngest person here at 29, but like I grew up with like video games and stuff very early on. Like I grew up with this stuff very early on. I understand. Oh, sorry, Mitch. I do apologize. Now thank you for making me feel old, but like. I know what this stuff does. Like, there were a time where I would play like a game for like 12 hours straight, and only stop just so I could go to the toilet. Like, I understand this completely. What this can do. So I'm talking to someone from experience, like almost like I wouldn't say an ex-addict in that sense, like an ex-addict, but someone who has experience. So I could say to especially younger ones, look, you need to calm it down. You need to calm it down. But that's me, being an overbearing uncle. But yes, I do apologize for insulting fellow guests who are younger than me.
All right. I'm old.
I mean, you talk about video games. I mean, I grew up on bloody Modern Warfare 2 lobbies, so...
Well, exactly. Like, especially if you was a squeaker, my God, you got tore apart.
Yeah. I mean, I found so the gamers I found most brutal for that were ironically the likes of the Serbs, like people from the Balkans were the most brutal at that game in terms of the lobbies.
Oh yeah. Like anyone, like I found when it comes to lobbies, it was either older people from like London who really just hated everyone. Yanks, like if you was a squeaker. For those who online do, if you had like a squeaky voice, you would get ripped apart. They'll just ask you to fuck off. Or half the time they'll think you're a woman. Excuse my language, but like that's what they would do.
And if you are a woman, you got kicked as well.
Yeah, or you got a lot of thirsty ass freaking Dorito smelling freaking Cheeto hands riddled freaking neckbeards wanting your number.
So much hate in that heart.
I know. I'm just saying. Like it was either fuck off or extreme thirst. No in between. Very rare you got something that was moderate. on that scale.
That continued. Like I joined World of Warcraft briefly in the lockdowns because all my friends in high school had played it growing up, and I never did.
That's a very addictive game. I do.
So I joined in because we all thought we were going to get locked down up here, but we only got locked down for 2 weeks. And I was like, well, if I can go to work and do stuff, I'm not going to keep playing this game. But I actually did get addicted to it. And I always laugh. I always laugh that the misogyny still runs strong in the classic World of Warcraft. As soon as anyone identifies as a girl, they're immediately kicked.
Yeah, that's fine. But but going back to points, like even I was a RuneScape player, like in my early teens. I was a RuneScape player because that was the big thing over here. And, I was, like, I mean, even then, like, I stopped, like, because I went off it when I was going to college and all that, and when I was bouncing around for jobs, and then when I got some stable employment, I got back into it, and then I stopped for a while, Now I'm just casually back and forth. It's like that's what happens. Like even me, like I remember, like, what was it? Between January to April of 2020, like I did not touch my console whatsoever. Like that was so weird. Like me, like I'd go on it at least twice a week, guaranteed. But I literally didn't touch it for like 4 months. So I got £500 worth of freaking equipment there, sitting there, just gathering dust. Because I was just drained of it. Didn't want to deal with it. But yeah, I think we're dragging on too long, and I don't think Duke wanted us to go on this late. Unless, of course,
Duke will normally tell you when he wants to stop. So.
Oh no, because I've seen previous episodes. They're normally about 2 hours, and now we're going on for 2 hours 45. So.
He's actually been uncharacteristically quiet. So
he might be AFK. He might be AFK, or he might mute himself. I can't tell. Okay. But
the FBI got him.
Very funny. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what everyone else's views on. If you do have kids, like, or if you don't, if you plan on doing so, are you going to limit the amount of technology they're going to have access to?
I mean, like, basically zero for me for as long as possible, until you need essential things like a computer to do something. But if it's going to be anything, it's going to be no video games and no phone, unless it's a Nokia brick when they're a teenager and they need it for emergencies with $1 prepaid call and text.
3310. Yeah, the old 3310s. Yeah, sorry, George.
Yep.
No, I was going to say it's quite an abstract question for me because I'm quite young, but like having kids would sort of I would need some assurances in the first. Because of course that in terms of technology, you need to restrict it. So for example, certain areas of applications, so the pull up thing, and you get the scrolly thing, and your phone will give you a little vibration. That's deliberately replicated from
slot machines.
Slot machines. Because it goes into your dopaminergic center because you think, oh look, highlights, I've got new information. So of course you want to avoid that because that's of course deliberately designed to get someone addicted. And of course, I, being a young person, am actually addicted, and I hate it. But it's
Me too.
It's kind of it's what it is, I suppose. We did.
No, I'm utterly addicted to my phone as well because of now Twitter and all these other things, Discord servers. It's just a constant stream of seeking validation and notifications. It's horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike.
Yeah. And it goes all the way down to the noises your phone makes.
Yeah.
The Discord goes burdup, burdup, and then your
Twitter notification.
And the reason why it goes up is because noises that go up normally elicit alert in your brain.
Yes.
It's the same. You see the same in birds when they're announcing a predator. They go did it. So these things are deliberately designed to get your attention. So, and this was engineered by a lot of smart fuckers in California, and no one had any idea what was going on until 10 years after the fact that this has happened. So of course, I'm incredibly skeptical of it, and of course I accept that there's been a lot of damage done, but And so it's probably too early for me to comment on what I would do with my kids, because like I don't even know where I'm going to be when I have kids, if it's even possible to have kids, or
it's always possible, mate.
I don't know. It depends how much city water I've drunk, I suppose.
Yeah. Because they're putting chemicals in the water to turn the freaking frog gay, which wasn't too far off the truth, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was less a factor of they're putting it in the water, and then it was just sort of happening because, if people use the pill, it's just what's going to happen. People use the pill, they need to pee, and that extra hormone surplus just goes straight into the water supply, and it's really hard to get rid of it. You need an ionizer.
Maybe we could counter this with major testosterone boosters in the water supply.
I don't think so. The problem is with adding androgens is that it stops your body from producing its sperm.
It suppresses endogenous testosterone production.
You get this with bodybuilders. Like bodybuilders who inject themselves with that actually get erectile dysfunction.
There's a common thing. Yeah, I'm not saying like go super crazy with it, but I'm just like, because forgive me if I'm speaking of complete ignorance here, but like if you like, I'm not saying being roided up for like 5 years and then going cold turkey, but I'm talking about the occasional slight boost, like let's say once every couple of years. Surely you'd still be fine with like your normal cycles.
It wouldn't have any effect on your actual physiological state if you're doing that though. You have but even if you're doing like a super slow release, very very sparse injections, that's still an exogenous androgen that will suppress natural sperm production. It has something to do with the production of gonadotropin, doesn't it? I can't remember my
I think so. Yeah. Well, guess we're gonna have to mass produce the red meat. Oh no, wait, they want to stop that with all the farm stuff with the freaking net zero crap.
Well, like the issue around declining testosterone is like not to do with red meat. It's like partly to do with the water supply. And like the main reason, like there's also a small genetic component. Like we haven't actually estimated properly.
Is that why I start crying every time I have a glass of water? Fuck.
I drink water. What a baby. I'm just kidding. But no. But like I do know about, because there's also talk about how, especially all the stuff with GMOs, like there's been a massive drop off in, just sperm counts and testosterone levels in men, especially in the last 40 years.
Well, you know how when you have a large group of women over a period of time, their menstrual cycles will begin to sync up. There's obviously a major kind of there's some sort of weird physiological signaling that happens, obviously intra-gender environments, but intergender environments, I think there's a lot of stuff to be said that perhaps the co-ed style of work and the feminization of education, and basically every single institution has become feminized, and men are obviously just constantly surrounded by women. I'm wondering if that's having an effect on that too, because it definitely affects their fucking behavior. I check in every now and again with my friends from South Australia who are, city people, city dwellers, and they're executives in places like Telstra and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to give out too information, but, they spend all their time working around women. And every time I check in and I talk to them on the phone, they sound more and more like they still have male voices, but they're like the way they talk and their sort of mannerism is like becoming more feminine. It's super camp, and they don't even notice that it's happening. And I live in a place like Cairns, where most of I think people really I associate with is my wife and blokes and tradies and stuff, and it's totally different. It's so fucking different. We're about 20 years behind, but it's still there's a lot of masculinity here still. But yeah, you go back to the cities and it's just it's horrible.
My theory in general about like the testosterone fall is that it's probably been a mix of processed foods. Like most people now eat processed foods, which will have sort of sterilization functions and different kind of chemicals that are put in it. Like even something like really sort of people don't even look at, like I know a chutney with your curry, like that's got some processing stuff in it. So that's part of the issue. And like, of course, there's also a small genetic mediation. And actually, a really interesting thing So they did a study on kids who were at school, boys in particular, and they had a check of boys who were lower in the social hierarchy, who most people expect to have lower testosterone. But something very interesting happens is that, like, when they're bullied, their testosterone goes up, which sort of indicates that difficulty produces testosterone, because it invokes the competitive spirit. And also, if you look at the bullies, they actually have lower testosterone. So what I think is actually going on is that men have a less competitive environment, so their physiology requires less testosterone from them.
The bully thing. I'm just sort of conceptualizing that, bullying as we sort of know of it today is not typical male behavior. It's actually female behavior, but it's female behavior in a male body, so you can exert more force. But in terms of like male hazing rituals, actual bullying is not very masculine. It's actually quite toxic. So yeah, we haze and we rib each other. But as soon as it gets over that point of like, oh, I'm going to destroy you, like this is uniquely feminine.
But like the broad conception, like in my mind, I haven't proven this or anything, but like there does seem to be evidence. It's just basically like what's happening is we have lower levels of need to compete for certain things. Our food is, our daily bread is guaranteed. We don't even need to pray to the Lord for it these days. It just sort of comes off the shelves. Forgive me, Father, for saying that. But it's the adversity is tough. It is not what it should be, and then the stuff we eat is probably not ideal. And I'm as guilty of this as any other. I had a curry today, and I ate mango chutney with it because I like mango chutney, and I'm Scottish, and I have a very sweet tooth. But like my family has had sweet tooths for as long as time goes by.
That's interesting. I've not known Scottish to have sweet tooth. They're normally a bit of a savoury. More savoury, are they not?
Well, I think the main counter to that is that one of the two favourite alcoholic beverages in Scotland is Drambuie and Buckfast.
Okay.
Buckfast is an incredibly, incredibly sweet alcohol. It's sort of a bit like and Drambuie is also an incredibly, incredibly sweet drink. Drambuie I really like. It's a guilty pleasure of mine, which is why I don't drink very much. But like and so like both but anyway, that's sort of an aside, because that's just an interesting quirk about Scottish people. As a general rule, it seems to be that we're eating more processed foods and we have less adversity, so we don't need as much testosterone. Anyway,
I'm not surprised. Yeah, I agree with that, and also just a major feminization of like just institutions.
Yeah,
well, I mean, the problem with saying that is that it's sort of like a very remote thing. You need to like it's quite far off, because what you're interested in sort of, because testosterone is a biological problem, you'd want to see sort of like, well, okay, how is the organism? What's the organism's environment like, and what's the organism's genetic?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
well, I mean, like, sorry. Yeah.
The organism at the moment has an environment that is, just in terms of the environment, and and like, even if that's the other thing, people are fatter. Men who are fatter produce more estrogen.
Yes.
But like, in terms of like an institution being more feminine, it's quite a far off thing. Like, you need to sort of more elevate that to a biological component, because like, you're dealing with the nuts and bolts of the human organism here, and society. I do kind of subscribe to the Coltane mantra that biology, culture, politics. I don't entirely agree with it. I also believe that politics has some sort of backward motion. It's a complex system. Fuck me.
So whatever you freaking called it. But Jake, are you still there, by the way?
No, I think Jake's died.
Can you get deep fried heroin in Scotland? I don't know, but you can certainly try.
Yeah, I mean, wait, Duke, are you?
Duke, you there?
I've always been here, guys. I'm just listening.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to end it. So I wasn't sure if you wanted to end the stream. Just like your shows don't normally go on this long, so didn't want to be.
No, I've done, I don't know, 4 hours quite often. I'm not sure we're doing anything new at the moment, but yeah.
Feels like a good stretch right there, but yeah, I mean, Mitch does put a point in the private chat. Like, it's one thing two lads scrapping over a toy or whatnot. You know, like back then, like if they was really bad with boys, they'll just have a fight and then it'll be over and done with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is sort of there has been this rise of sort of gossip and bitching, and it's like I mean, when I was younger at school, it was probably if there was an issue, then you had a skiff, and if the skiff went against you, then you just sort of accepted that you were in the wrong. Sort of that until you get to have another fight. And also no one else joined you in the fight. I'm not sure if you guys seen recent videos of like fights and things like that, but I've noticed that a lot of people are a lot more willing to join in and start ganging up on others.
Yes.
And it's like sort of lacking in option. But
yeah, I mean, I can't stand that shit.
Because that's the difference between that's a conflict between an honor culture and a polite culture, because you might think that an honor culture would facilitate two men having a biffo, but it actually is a polite culture, because you notice whenever they do that, it's sort of like a ritual unto itself where, they'll have a biff and they'll actually conciliate afterwards, generally. They might not be best of mates, but they'll shake hands and go, oh, well, good going.
Yeah.
And that's an old trope. That's an old trope for boomers now, but it's literally true. That's exactly what used to happen.
It's a mark of respect. It's basically
right, yeah.
Because there is disincentive as a man to try and go in for the kill with the other man, and the reason is that if you do that, you are going to incentivize the fight or flight. And if you incentivize the fight or flight, the probability is that they're going to have a lot more adrenaline in their body than you do, and then you might lose. So men will typically go into reconciliation. And
Lady Charlotte says men fight but then move on, which is exactly true. You'll notice in any marriage, as soon as anyone has an argument, the guy's already over it 2 minutes later, but she's fucking seething.
Yeah, well, I mean, should we even bring up the infamous Sean Connery interview from what was it, like 86, talking about women and
give her a slap.
Yeah, but but that's
man talk.
No, but what I do find funny is that women are like, oh, they're seething, you want to get over it. I always found funny is that if you, as a man, end up beating the woman at that sort of argument, that really pisses them off, but they will ultimately back down because you basically trump them at their main game. And I'm saying this as a man of experience. Like, if you can beat a woman in an argument to make her look to the point where they back down, like that makes them even more mad. No. Trust me, I've done this with my mother, and she's like a grade A female.
Oh, you're a terrible person.
Oh, you call me a terrible person.
She's like she's a black belt in arguing with her son.
Just leave your mum alone.
No, I'm sorry. Like, she likes to cause a scene, and like where I see it is, if I don't put the if I don't do it with her, she's going to end up giving it to someone else, and they're not going to be as polite about it.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I see it is, I'm doing a public service for people in my local area. And also anyone listening, no, I don't ever use my hands because I don't need to. My tongue is already a destructive weapon as it is. Not even joking.
Ooh, and I heard your ego is too.
Nah, I mean, people say I'm big ego, but I'm just like, look, I met people in person.
Does anyone actually remember what Sean Connery said in that interview?
Yeah, basically he said that men can let it go, but women don't always like to have the last laugh. And he pointed out, I think he says along the lines, when you've exonerated every other peaceful option on the table, then what are you left with?
A slap.
Then you give her a slap.
Yeah.
Well, I think he was only saying that,
which is absolutely true.
Well, I think he was referring specifically. He was referring specifically to when they go out of control.
Yeah.
But also it's also referencing a quote he said years ago in some tablet where a woman's trying to scold him for it, and it's just like, well, ultimately what he's saying is not exactly wrong, and the point is that like
no, it wasn't. It wasn't
with
at all wrong.
No, but like the thing is,
women were still voting Sean Connery sexiest man in the world when he was 65.
Well, even in his 70s, but like but the point is that like okay, George, take care, good sir. But the point is that like women, like we as men, we know that the ultimate thing that keeps the peace is the potential of violence, right? Whereas women don't necessarily have this aspect in the back of their minds, right?
No, they don't even understand it. Women don't understand violence at all.
Yeah, which is why, like, ironically enough, if you look at like cultures where it's not a major taboo to quote unquote lay a hand on a woman, right? You notice how different the women are. Like when it starts, they don't necessarily argue with their men as much.
I think there is a strong case for men occasionally putting their woman over their knee and giving them several slaps on the rear end. I really do.
Of course, consensual, of course.
So, well, yeah, kind of, I guess. But
to Arbane's point in the chat, yes, some people, yes, plenty of men out there do also need a slap. Like there's a definite lack of humbleness, especially in modern society. And like back in the day, you either got humbled by either your parents, your fellow peers, or nature itself.
Yep.
Nowadays, two of those things are gone, and the third one, my God, most of those people don't ever experience nature. They're stuck in their giant freaking glass prisons, to use an expression.
That's for sure. But I mean, look, women even like men who are in charge. They just do. You can argue against that all you like, but like even feminists reveal preferences show that they do.
Yeah, well, that's because feminists are idiots who lie about everything they say. It's like, this is what makes me laugh about, and I bring this up in the funny enough on another site I go on a lot. It's about the subject of stated versus revealed preferences. Like, I don't care what people state; it's always their actions that always dictates who you are. Everyone can talk the talk. It's ultimately about walking the walk that states the difference. You know, it's like I hear a lot of people claim, "Oh, they're going to do this," and I'm just like, "No, you're not." No, what do you mean? It's like, no, you're not going to do that, because if you were serious, you would have done it already. So don't give me
JB in the chat says, Brit history is King Arthur and being invaded by Rome, not those Hengist, August, lesbians, and Beowulf. JB, Brit history is King Alfred the Great and defeating the great heathen army. That's real British history. But
but you know, enough. But anyway, back on subject. Like, but that's the ironic thing is about you know, when people talk about you know, masculinity, it's like feminists claim they want effeminate men. It's like, no, you fucking do not. You're lying to yourselves. Because if that was true, you would go with the highly submissive nerd over there rather than going for the quote unquote Giga Chad fucking jock, you know, who's the captain of the football team. Like, don't give me this BS, okay? Your so-called freaking reptilian brain that's got over 100,000 years worth of evolutionary psychology built into it will always trump whatever you claim it's in that nice front lobe cortex you got up here. It always trumps it.
The Biarki in the chat says, if you're in charge, you don't need to slap. Iron Duke, slapping shows you're not in charge. Biarki, you have been totally taken over by feminist nonsense. Thank you for proving to me you are absolutely, totally a feminist male.
I'll
Yeah,
add.
but the problem is-
I'll add a variable to it though too, which is like when you're dealing with legitimate, like, you know, the firecracker Latinas sort of type of personality of women. It gets pretty tumultuous. And no, you're not going to be able to calm her down with just words. If she starts coming at you, slapping you and hitting you, you're gonna have to put her on the ground. And so she stops hurting herself and hurting you.
Chris, many years ago, I was with my chick and we got lost in between, like, if you understand, for Australians, between the Gulf of Carpentaria and getting on the road that leads you north to Cairns, there is a wilderness in that area. Like, there are some cattle stations and stuff, but it's basically a wilderness. And we got totally lost. And my chick really lost her shit on the second day we were lost. We had loads of water, we had loads of fuel, we had loads of food because, you know, we were doing this trip. And I had to sit on her. Literally, I had to sit on her to stop her wandering off into the bush and dying of thirst. That's all I could do. I had to sit on her. But you know, women. The women are just like that. The idea, as Bjarke says here, that it's all in your head. That's a feminist.
Like when you deal with this kind of woman, that whole idea of freaking so-called not laying your hands on, like, trust me, like, I'm saying this as a relatively young man. It's been so tempting for me to lay my hand across my mother's face. It's been so.
Oh no! You don't do that to your mother.
No. But my point being is that, like, that, you know, they say your mothers and your fathers are like what you base a lot of your interactions with your fellow peers on in many aspects, right? Especially in the dating market, right? There have been plenty of times where I could have very easily have done it, but I've chosen not to, right? And if it was quote unquote socially acceptable to do that, oh my lord, my mother would be the most battered woman in the city because of how much of a bitch.
I haven't seen my mother since I was 5 or 6, so I don't know. I mean, I'd probably be the number one bloke who should slap his mother, but
but what I'm saying is that, like, you know,
if my mother was still around, and like I say, I haven't seen her since I was 5 or 6, so since the late 1970s. I probably wouldn't hit her. I might spit on her, but I wouldn't hit her. And I don't understand, like, why would anyone, like, hit their mother? That doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest.
Well, I can understand, because I understand exactly what he's getting to. I mean, I have a really, I hate going to personal details. So I had a very chaotic sort of upbringing with our single mother before she was married, and it got sort of worse as we were growing up. And it does get to a point where, but I mean, like, I think we got to the point where we were, like, pretty broken down, so we never really had any aggression towards her. It was just sort of like, you know, you just learn to submit pretty much. But, like, I'll just say that, you know, there is that, it all depends on what type of woman you're talking about. Majority of women are not going to be like that. They're gonna basically follow your lead all the time. They're usually very. I just don't get it. I don't. But you do have this strong-willed type of woman that is just they're going to press.
There are ones who are going to really make you test those limits. It's like, you know, like people say, like, who have these virtues about these ideals about themselves. And then someone comes along who really tests them. If I were to use a cultural example of this, it's like Batman's virtues versus Joker's as a person. Joker pushes Batman to his limits on his principles, and that's the whole point. You do get those types.
I never cared about people in capes and tights.
No. But I was using it in a.
I see what you're saying. Biaki in the chat says, if you have to slap a woman, you were never in charge. I'm sorry, Biaki. If you never put your woman over your knee, you're not in charge.
well, on that point, I mean, that's a fair point.
Honest, if you never put your woman over your knee because she's just being too lippy or too noisy or whatever she's doing, you are not in charge. I'm sorry.
Naughty.
Yeah, but like the problem is that, like, you know, people forget violence is the ultimate authority of which all authority derives from.
Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely,
and that's what people
100%.
forget. Like, I had to learn this lesson the hard way as a kid, and not from necessarily my father either. It was either through, you know, at school or like, you know, causing trouble then. Like, at the end of the day, you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, some people, like, you can't reason with some people. Sometimes you have to, you know, I hate to use the term treat them like an animal, but like, even in the animal kingdom, they know full well what violence does.
Yeah.
Like, there is such a thing called the preemptive strike. Like, it happens even within, like, you know, family members of their own freaking species. Like,
oh, look, guys, I mean, I don't know.
The distinction has to be made too, which Arbane Sword has brought up, which is putting her over your knee in a joking way. That's different to losing control of yourself, and that's exactly right. Like when you get to the point with the sort of stuff that we grew up with, which was like getting battered beyond belief. That's just him losing control.
I never ever saw that. I never saw that, Chris. The only thing
I'm not saying
the only thing I ever saw was like my old man doing night work. And me knowing 57 uncles. I never saw my old man lose control, ever.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw him doing night work, night after night after night, and then looking after me and my younger brother during the day. And I knew 57 uncles when I was a little kid. Up to the age of 6. So that was like quite a lot, you know what I mean?
But I mean, on that point as well, it's like, well, I'm not saying advocating for straight up beating women outright.
No,
but I'm just saying that, like,
never said that. Never said I advocate for
I'm not saying
women.
you did. No. I'm not saying you did. I'm not saying you did. I told you.
People who punch women.
Yeah,
I have no room for whatsoever. People who do more than once slap a woman on the face, which is what Sean Connery was talking about, I have no room for whatsoever. On the other hand, a lot of women absolutely do deserve to be put across a bloke's knee and spanked.
Yeah. Now, ultimately, as well, like, and also as well, like, I'm not just saying that this is just an anti-women's perspective. There's plenty of blokes out there who I would gladly say deserve a slap. And the problem is that I don't care.
Oh, hundreds, mate.
I'm sure all of us as men here will agree with this, right? Being slapped is much more humiliating than being punched.
Oh, look, I'd never slap a bloke.
No. But if you receive it, it is much more humiliating than taking a punch.
It is. Actually, slapping a bloke that's really disrespecting you is actually quite a good way to go because it humiliates him.
I listen. Like I've had chicks punching me in the chest and throwing ornaments at me, and you just laugh. That's what you do because you're a bloke, you know. Sword of Vigility points out very well in the chat that, like, old John Wayne films often had women being put over someone's knee and like spanked. That was quite common because that's what used to happen in the old
I've got to go, fellas. I've got a lot to do. I'll speak to you later.
No worries, you take
it. All right, guys. No worries. We're nearly done anyway.
Okay, see you, fellas.
But yeah, I mean, Arbane Sword of Agility, yes, that is what used to happen. So yeah. But anyway, I just think men let women get away with far too much today.
Women are like get away with absolute murder in modern society.
No, literally, sometimes, yes.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I know this is going to come off as like MRA or red pill and stuff, but it's like this is just an objective fact of the modern society. Okay, now, like, quite frankly, this ain't really going to change unless there are like major changes legally speaking. But ultimately, like this is something like we do have to deal with. Quite frankly, as much as we hate it, but it's something we got to deal with. Like it does my head in how like women can get away with absolute murder.
Bjarki, I don't agree with you at all.
Wait, what's I hope is the NS stand for National Socialist?
I have no idea, but like
Yeah,
I just don't agree with.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. If that is what I think it means. Yeah, actually, that's not true. It
probably is that, but I still don't.
I mean, if it means that, like, I'm sorry, some of the most psychotic, sadistic women were a part of this group, and even there's tales that even their husbands and even members of the party had to get involved to cut it out.
Half the National Socialists were gay anyway, so there we go.
Well, dare we ask about the infamous person and what was his relationship like with his niece?
Well, yeah, but I mean, even more than that, you could look at the bloke who was in charge of the brown shirts, for example. Bjarki saying this is lies. Okay. Bjarki, it's not lies. Honestly, he was very, very gay. The guy in charge of the stormtroopers was extremely gay. He was caught in bed with a load of young boys.
To say Vulture, I definitely agree. Talking about that way can easily do that as well. But again, like, Faith. But yeah, like sometimes your tongue is the most destructive weapon needed, and I know how deadly I can be with my tongue.
You can't be deadly with your tongue against most chicks, mate. Honestly, you can't. Trust me.
No. Trust me. I put quote unquote, and I hate to use this internet term, but alpha bitches. Yes, that's what they call themselves. I've made them cry with just one line.
Well, if you could do that, I'd probably admire you, but I'm not going to go into it. Bjarki says,
not trying to
were there any real Elsa of the SS lesbian Gestapo? I think not. I think Bjarki has been watching some very poor porn movies, but there we
go. Well, let's not go into that subject.
Yeah, let's not. Anyway, whatever. Last thoughts, gents.
Well, I mean, sorry, Rich.
Can't say I got any.
Well, I can say his final thoughts. It's been a very great, pleasant conversation, and hope everyone's enjoyed. And maybe Duke will invite me to come on next week, if he's happy, of course.
Kizza, you're always everyone in my Discord is always invited to join these streams. So absolutely, enough, you are.
Yes. No worries,
could I just say to JB in the chat? Settle an argument. Does the average Anglo know more about Arthur than Beowulf? I'm not sure.
I would definitely say Arthur. I would definitely say Arthur because Beowulf, all I think of is that really weird movie that came out in I think it was the mid 2000s.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
That's the only thing I think of.
But I would say that better than either of those two is Alfred the Great. When Wessex was the last bit of Anglo England and was pressed on every side by the heathens, and King Alfred the Great fought his way out of it. I mean, he also used his brain. And he did like diplomatic stuff as well, but he basically fought his way out of that. And as Arbane sort of agility says in the chat, Alfred is the only English king who has great in his title, and quite rightly because he bloody well was great. He was like the original Englishman in many respects because he was extremely well educated, extremely brave and gallant in warfare, and really clever and very modest. and a really good bloke. I mean, like I've heard people saying like that King Arthur should should be the English icon. In my opinion, it should be King Alfred because he was great. Sabine Ren 21, formerly Ellen Hunter, in the chat says, "I come from Wessex." Yeah, like my old man lives in part of the world that used to be Wessex too. Now, although he was born in London like I was. But yeah, Alfred the Great is the dude that all Englishmen should really admire, in my opinion.
That's fair. That's fair. Like, I'm not fully versed on monarchical history, but I definitely should check him out. But maybe if I get that magic lamp and I take over as king from King Charles III, I'd be the great supreme emperor. Which would be
I'd say bring back the Plantagenets at this stage.
Well. I mean, what I would do to this island, I mean, this would sound scary as a policy. I would implement what I would, after I dealt with the European question and the Commonwealth and the American question, I will start what I like to call the Great Rebuild. And it would take a very long time. Like, this would take at a minimum 25 years for this plan. I would say at the most 50 years. But by the time it was done, oh boy, the worst of the world are going to be very jealous.
Sabine Reign 21, formerly Ellen Hunter, says we need India back for an emperor. See, this is why women sometimes need to go over your knee and be spanked.
no, forget about India.
They sometimes come out with crap like that. But yeah, all right. I think we've probably done enough. Do you have anything you would like to shill?
I might be on my friend's. I might be on the Broken Crown podcast channel potentially this Wednesday. Hopefully, that's a podcast show hosted by the lovely Aidan Paladin and the South African lovely man called Spoon. I
don't know Spoon, but Aidan Paladin is generally pretty good.
Cool. Oh no, they're both hardcore monarchists. Just out of FYI, and Spoon, you'll love him. He's a very unapologetic, blunt, white South African.
Kizza, could you do me a favor and DM me the link for that?
I will do. Yeah.
I'll put it in the description later on.
I will do. Yeah.
Mitch, anything you wanted to show me?
Not anything from me now.
Yeah.
All right. I have to shill that. I'm not sure if it's going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday next week. I have a second Australian history stream, mainly about convicts on this occasion, with Chris Gard, who left us recently, because I don't blame him because he'd been on for hours. So we'll be doing that on this channel, and also. At some stage, I'm not sure quite when, I'm going to be doing an Anglo-Boer War stream on this channel, which I think will piss off most modern white South Africans, as well as most British people. So it'll probably be quite interesting.
I'm sure Spoon would love to hear your take on that one. I mean, he does have some interesting positions on the South Africa question, especially on the apartheid question.
Oh, look, I moved to South Africa in 85 under the white government, and it was much the best government South Africa has had since 1985. So that's my view on that. It was a good government. South Africa was the most advanced country in Africa by a long way. And under the white government, loads of black Africans wanted to try and move into it. Funny that, eh?
Yeah, it's almost like economic prosperity attracts the least economic prosperous people.
Yes.
Yeah, but I love being oppressed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did make a fun video about
It's funny how black South Africans were the richest black people in Africa out of every single country in Africa under the white government.
Yeah, funny that. But then again, as my friend Spoon did a video on this last year, I think it was either last year or early this year, that if segregation came back to America, white Americans would benefit massively. I'm not joking, by the way. You can find it. Just type in.
Yeah, no, I don't totally disagree with you, but like, you know.
No. Like I said, like if you just search Spoon and just put the filter to channels, you'll find it. He's got like nearly 7,000. He's got about 7,000 subs. I think he just
like I said, Kizza,
yeah.
DM me that link and I'll stick it in the description.
I already DM'd one of the links. Yeah, I'll just DM the other one. Hold on.
JB in the chat says, "Stop accepting their narrative. Slap them with the truth." This is why I always say you need to do with women. But there we go. So anyway, as always, I'm going to play us out the tune.
Yeah. Take care, all.
Rip the boys to pull up the roof. You want to see us running, the wind of blowing on a passage from the Dogger Bank to Grey Grimsby. Captain Roosh loves a pint of good ale. Our mate the rains to be still, but he's a bushranger. He comes from the African Isle. And take a look at our old cook, it gets the bugger wild. Watch out. Yeah, she's a proper Julie Jew. Want to see us running, the wind of blowing it free. I see from the Dogger Bank to Grey Grimsby. She can do the double shuffle on the knickerbocker line. Watch out to wing her, she's a proper Julie Jew. Give her a sheet and let her rip the boys to pull her through. From back to Grey. Boys to make the noise when we come home from sea. We get a jubilee, we get right drunk full of beer.
Song from an excellent channel called Patriotic Archive. And Patriotic Archive is a member of my Discord. Please do go and check him out for some really great British and also other songs. Some traditional, some military, some naval. That was a fisherman's song. Yeah. So, okay. Come and see us on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not quite sure which day it will be yet because Chris is organising it for our second Australian history stream. And come and see us next week for Splendid Isolation number 102, for God's sake. Go well, folks, and we will see you soon. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like the stream, because it does help us. And thank you very much to all my guests. Good evening.
Farewell.
Farewell.